Welcome, everyone. The September 3rd, 2024 regular council meeting is called to order at 4 o'clock. Council would like to acknowledge the Ucluelethat on whose traditional territories the District of Ucluelet operates. Audience members and delegates are advised that this proceeding is being video recorded and broadcast on YouTube and Zoom, which may store data on foreign servers. 5 Ucluelet and Tofino residents brought home medals at the 2024 BC Summer Games in Maple Ridge. I'd like to celebrate each of them. When I call out your name, please stand if you are in attendance. They're on their way. And audience, please hold your applause until I have named the 5 medalists.
It's pretty good. I don't even really like strawberry. Oh, well, that explains it. That's what I meant, raspberry.
Excellent, thank you. So Kennedy Bruno won a medal in wrestling. Who's Kennedy? Come on over here. Maxton Lengel won a medal in athletics for Special Olympics. I don't see Max here. Mason Midlane won a medal in ultimate frisbee. Come on down. Caitlin Midlane won a medal in wrestling. And Wyatt Rhodes won a medal in wrestling. I'd like to congratulate these 5 outstanding young people. I believe the media is here for a photo op, so council, maybe we can stand up.
Media is here. Okay, hold on, because last time I didn't get Jennifer. Can she hear me? Jennifer, lower your head. I want you to be in the shot. If you lower, yeah. Yeah, you had it. Yes. All right, perfect. All right, now Mark, I need a flirty little head tilt. Yeah. Oh, we got it. Okay, now nobody move. Okay, now smile. Okay, you're looking happy. No, hold up the medals. Do something with them. If you want to bite them, hold them close to your face, near your chins. You got 3 of them, man. Nice work. All right. No, we'll hold up the other 2. You got 2 hands. Yeah. Oh, you dropped one. Okay. Yeah, bite one. Oh, yeah, okay. All right, now we're going to take a few here. All right? So holding it. Okay, big smiles. Look way happier than that. Way happier. Council, happy, yay! Oh, we got it. Yeah, nailed it. Okay, right on. Thank you guys so much.
Congratulations, you guys.
I'd like to also acknowledge their families because I'm sure they could not have gotten here without their families. So thank you to you as well.
Thank you.
Late items. Has council received the late items? I have not. Is there a copy for me? Okay, I'll just
We'll give you 30 seconds.
I'll just whip through that in a few minutes. Yeah. Okay. Great. Yeah. All right. May I have a motion to amend the agenda by adding the late item titled "Additional Public Hearing Written Submissions Related to Bylaw Numbers 1337, 2024, and 1322, 2024," under Agenda Item 6.1. And adding the late item titled "Support Documentation Related to Item 9.3, 4-Way Stop at Peninsula Road and Bay Street, Verbal Report with some written..."
It's not the whole package.
Okay. Under Agenda Item 9.3.
So
Councillor Mafty. Do I have a seconder?
I'll second that.
Councillor Anderson, all in favor? None opposed, that carries. May I have a motion to adopt the agenda as amended?
So moved.
Councillor Anderson,
Second.
Councillor Kennington, all in favor? None opposed, that carries. There are 2 meeting minutes for adoption this afternoon. The first minutes are from the June 11th, 2024 regular council meeting. Are there any errors or omissions? Seeing none, may I have a motion to adopt the June 11th, 2024 regular council meeting minutes as presented?
So moved.
Councillor Anderson,
Second.
Councillor Mafty, all in favor? None opposed, that carries. The next set of minutes are from the July 30th, 2024 regular council meeting. Are there any errors or omissions? Seeing none, may I have a motion to adopt the July 30th, 2024 regular council meeting minutes as presented?
So moved.
Councillor Kennington,
Second.
Councillor Anderson, all in favor? None opposed, that carries. Thank you. We have one delegation this afternoon from the Ucluelet Chamber of Commerce. The Chamber's Executive Director will present. Please limit your presentation to 10 minutes if possible, and welcome Mr. Jenkins. I think you have to turn it on.
Hello, hello.
There, you're good.
Yeah, I don't have to bend forward as much. It's nice. Thank you, Mayor and Council, for receiving our delegation. We're here today because the Chamber has been stepping into the economic development role for the community. This is a common role for chambers in smaller communities, especially when economic development work isn't being undertaken in an official capacity already. But this role is, but it's a role that needs to be compensated for to ensure the Chamber is still able to serve its members properly. Just a note on that is that economic development work is for the community as a whole, so it's something that we go beyond what the normal range of our membership services and advocacy, and as well, we also have a capacity issue that's pretty significant for the Chamber and the Economic Development Committee, and that's an issue that needs to be addressed. So the funds that we are requesting are meant to help with these capacity issues, and in the future to be leveraged to gain more funds through potential grants such as the REDUP grant that we'll be applying for this fall. And future grants will be used to fuel economic development for the betterment of the community and for its neighbors. And so as you're aware, earlier this year, we assembled the Economic Development Committee, and it's a strong group made up of important partners, rights holders, and stakeholders, including representation from First Nations, the Pacific Rim National Park, CBT, employment services, tourism, other important industry sectors, and more. We spent the first few months developing the structure, range, and purpose for the committee, and building a strong foundation for the important work to come. It has been a lot of work and constant learning experience, but we're making good strides while dealing with the capacity issues previously mentioned. We will be able to start supplying updates, and a one-year strategic plan will be ready in the next month or so. And as far as the importance of building the partnership with the district, so this would be something we'd be approaching later in the fall, a partnership agreement that we've been discussing with Dwayne Lawrence, the CEO. This partnership that we would be developing would be, it would show the community that the important organizations in Ucluelet can team up for the betterment of everybody as a whole, and that we can accomplish a lot more if we work together. And this also helps reduce overlapping of efforts and make sure that gaps are being filled, such as economic development. The committee will be doing regular reporting to the district and the mayor and council. As well, I also have the monthly meetings with Dwayne Lawrence to keep the lines of communication open and to collaborate on community needs. We have, so something to keep in mind though with the partnership agreement that we would be broaching would be that it's still important for the Economic Development Committee in the Chamber to still have autonomy and independence from government on all levels as the mandate to represent our businesses and organizations in advocacy and policy work. We need to remain independent with that. But this is still easily achieved within that agreement. But obviously, we will always take the districts and needs under advisement and continue to try to work with them on everything we can. So just to clarify, as of now, we just need the approval for the $35,000 that is presently on hold for our committee. And we will work on phase 2 and 3 for our 3-year proposal, as well as outlining the partnership agreement this fall. So that's on the proposal we sent in. It sort of has it in 2 sections. So the first section is what we're working on today, and then the other section is what we'll be looking for to work on later this fall. And then we'd also greatly appreciate a letter of support for our REDUP application. We can supply some key points that can be utilized in this letter, if that would be helpful as well. And just thank you for your consideration. If you have any questions or thoughts or...
Any questions for Mr. Jenkins from council? No, it's all pretty straightforward. Now, because we don't usually make a motion at a delegation, I would move that we refer the Chamber of Commerce's request to staff for a report to come back at our September 24th council meeting. And so just so you know that you won't be waiting longer than that for,
no problem,
that report. And I'm sure everything looks great.
Yeah, I just felt it was appropriate to do a delegation regardless of,
No, that's great. And is there a deadline for that letter of support?
The deadline is end of October, I believe it is. So
Okay,
I can give you solid dates on that when but I'll send in the information for the request and everything.
Perfect. That would be great.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. I guess I need a seconder for that motion.
I'll second it.
Councillor Kennington seconds. Any further discussion? All in favor? None opposed. That carries. Thank you. All right. We will now conduct a public hearing on District of Ucluelet Official Community Plan Amendment Bylaw number 1337, 2024, and District of Ucluelet Zoning Amendment Bylaw number 1322, 2024. These bylaws relate to the property at 1061 Helen Road. This is the second public hearing on these bylaws. The first public hearing was held on June 25th, 2024. After hearing that Council defeated a motion to give District of Ucluelet Official Community Plan Amendment Bylaw number 1337, 2024, third reading. At its next regular meeting, Council reviewed an email from the applicant's agent requesting that Council reconsider the vote which defeated the Official Community Plan Amendment Bylaw. At this meeting, I invoked my power under Section 131 of the Community Charter to require that Council reconsider its vote. The second vote on third reading of the amendment bylaw was then deferred until September 3rd, and staff were directed to schedule a second public hearing. So we are now holding the second public hearing, and later in tonight's agenda, Council will vote again on a motion to give third reading to Official Community Plan Amendment Bylaw number 1337, 2024. As provided for in the Local Government Act, Council is required to hold a public hearing before adopting a zoning bylaw, an official community plan bylaw, or amendments thereto, unless a public hearing is prohibited by the Local Government Act or waived by Council in accordance with that Act. At the conclusion of this hearing, it will be closed. Once the public hearing is closed, Council cannot accept further communications or presentations from the applicant or the public respecting the proposed bylaws until Council decides to hold an additional public hearing. And please note there will be no decisions made during this hearing, and Council is under no obligation to enter into debate on any issue. Council will consider the bylaws later in the meeting's agenda after the hearing is closed. The purpose of this hearing is to hear from the public before third reading of the bylaws. Council may consider amending the proposed bylaws based on input received at this public hearing. At a public hearing, all persons who deem their interest in property affected by the proposed bylaws will be given an opportunity to be heard or to present written submissions on matters contained in the bylaws. However, all those who speak must restrict their comments to the subject bylaws, and it is my responsibility to ensure that all remarks are so restricted. You will have 5 minutes to address council for the first time. Staff will advise you at the 4-minute mark and when your time is up. After everyone has spoken once, those wishing to speak again will have an opportunity. After hearing submissions from members of the public, council may ask questions to clarify what has been said. However, this is not a Q&A session or a town hall meeting. To maintain an atmosphere that is respectful of all points of view, it is important for the audience to refrain from applauding or cheering for speakers. Today, members of the public can participate in person or electronically. All speakers must state their name and address. And the Manager of Corporate Services will follow up with some more information.
The subject bylaws, related materials, and the District of Ucluelet zoning bylaw and the District of Ucluelet official community plan bylaw are available for review at the back table and on the district's webpage. So the back table's over here. The public can participate in this hearing in person or by phone or by email to communityinput@ucluelet.ca. To speak in person, raise your hand when the mayor calls for in-person speakers. The mayor will call on you when it's your turn. Please speak from the mic at the podium. To speak by Zoom, please click the raise hand icon when the mayor calls for speakers via Zoom. When it's your turn, the clerk will call on you by your Zoom name, so please ensure it's your first and last name. To speak by phone, press *9 when the mayor calls for speakers calling in. When it's your turn, the moderator will call on you by the last 3 digits of your phone number. Please press *6 to unmute yourself. Any unpublished emails about the bylaw received at communityinput@ucluelet.ca before the end of the public hearing will be read into the record. Please put the bylaw numbers in the subject line and keep your emails short. Published correspondence will not be read, so that includes the late items that were submitted and attached to the agenda. For further details about how to participate by Zoom, telephone, or email, please visit ucluelet.ca/public hearings. Turning it over to the mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Rotenberg. I now declare the public hearing for District of Ucluelet Official Community Plan Amendment Bylaw number 1337-2024 and District of Ucluelet Zoning Amendment Bylaw number 1322-2024 open. The Director of Community Planning will now provide a brief overview of these bylaws. After the Director speaks, the applicant will have an opportunity to address the Council, after which I will call 3 times for public input. Mr. Gregg.
Thank you. In general terms, the purpose of Official Community Plan Amendment Bylaw number 1337-2024 is to amend the District of Ucluelet Official Community Plan Bylaw number 1306-2022 to change the designation of 1061 Helen Road from single-family residential to multifamily residential on Schedule A, which is the long-range land use plan map in the OCP, or the Official Community Plan. And then the second bylaw, in general terms, again, the purpose of the zoning amendment bylaw number 1322-2024 is to amend the Ucluelet zoning bylaw number 1160-2013 to permit multiple family residential as an allowable principal use at 1061 Helen Road in the form of one or multiple buildings, up to 6 dwelling units and a maximum total combined gross floor area of 1,200 square meters. Back to you.
Does Council have any questions for staff? No, I see no questions. So we are now moving on to the applicant presentation section of this public hearing. This is an opportunity for the applicant to speak to their proposal, including the proposed bylaws and development permit DP 22-13. Would the applicant or their representative like to address Council?
Applicant, if you're attending online, click the raise hand icon. I don't see any raised hands at this time.
All right, so we'll move on to public input. This is the first call for speakers. Are there any members of the public attending in person who wish to address the bylaws? Please raise your hand. I'll call on you when it's your turn. Ms. Eftink, please go to the mic.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. Oh, is this thing still on? Yes, okay. Good afternoon, everyone. My name's Tracy Eftink, and I live at 1091 Helen Road, which is quite close to the subject property. And I just feel that I would like to oppose this development proposal from single-family residential to multifamily residential. And a lot of people have spoken already about how narrow Helen Road is. So I'm not going to say that again, but it's in my letter. But I just think that making this change to a higher density zoning will negatively impact our neighborhood for the enjoyment of the existing residents. Part of the reason is because of how narrow the road is, and it's a pinch point in a few places. So I think that low-income housing would be more suited for areas with proximity to services, shopping, schools, and playgrounds. And there are other areas in Ucluelet where higher density and low-income housing would be more suitable. The applicant for this rezoning made the choice to purchase a single-family residential lot, possibly with the intention of applying for rezoning. The District of Ucluelet staff should be encouraged to work with these developers to steer them to areas more suitable for their investments. Changing the community plan and the zoning at this address will send a message to investors that Ucluelet is a place that they can manipulate for their own interests. So Mayor and Council, please vote against this rezoning application. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you for your comments. Are there any other members of the public attending that would like to speak? Ms. Sieber?
I am Patricia Sieber. I live at 1058 Helen Road, which is right across the street from this proposed development. I'm sorry to be speaking to you again. I thought we'd settled it. And you have heard and read our objections to this rezoning, so I will not repeat them now. The majority of the requests for rezoning that have come before council in the past year have been tied to the promise of affordable housing to solve our housing crisis. And it's clear we have a housing crisis. But it's also clear to those investors who see this problem that that's the best way for them to sell what they want to do. But you don't have to look very far to find out that this, in resort communities, the provision of more houses does not automatically lead to affordable housing. In this instance and others that follow, if this one is granted, the community is being asked to ignore the cost and inconvenience to the current residents on the promise of affordable housing. Why us, when there are so many other sites around town that would support increased density, that would be far less cost in upgrading the roads and providing safe access? Maybe because the land was the least expensive that the investor could find, and that was probably the logical answer as to why he's chosen to do this in this particular spot. But is it our obligation to make sure that this investor gets a good return on his investment? So I ask you once again, who gains if this rezoning is granted, and who loses? So thank you for your consideration, and I hope you will once again reject the rezoning.
Thank you for your comments. Are there any other members of the public attending that would like to speak? Yes.
Are we allowed to ask questions of you?
This is just for commentary, really, not questions. It's not a Q&A. Okay, Mr. Morgan.
Hi, my name is Dennis Morgan. I've been here about 11 years. I own a small business, and I live at 1208 Helen Road, so just other side of Marine from this. I've been having a hard time keeping track of all these projects lately, and I've talked to a couple councillors that sort of a database of which project is at what stage and everything like that would be exceptionally helpful for those of us who do wish to see the more appropriate developments go forward and the other ones, efficiently gotten rid of. This one, I'm not sure. It seemed, I don't know as much as I should about it, but it seems like we haven't really seen what these multi-family houses would look like, right? There's no development plans, there's no drawings or anything like that. So how can it be sold as even multi-family, or, well, I guess if we get the zoning it could be, or affordable? I'm just curious how they could say that, and we have no proof of what they're actually going to build yet.
I think there were drawings, Mr. Gregg, am I correct?
Through the mayor, yes, I just draw your attention, and I can share it with you. Page starts on page 73 of the agenda, is attached to the staff report are the site plan and the building drawings, and they have a three-dimensional sort of rendering of the townhouses as well.
Thanks. Okay, my bad on that one. But my next consideration would be what restrictions or bylaws can be put in place to ensure that these are not just another set of short-term rental buildings. Because if that is any possibility here, then even more so than the impact on the traffic in front of my house, which is already significant, I think just in provision of more short-term rentals at the expense of homes, family homes and rentals is not, I can't support that.
So what the current zoning allows on that property is a single-family dwelling, a secondary suite, an accessory residential dwelling unit, and 3 bed and breakfasts. So that's 6 units. That's the current zoning allows. And what they are looking to do is have a half duplex, another half duplex, and 4 multifamily residential units for a total of 6. So it's 6 either way. It's just in the current zoning, they're allowed to have short-term rentals, and in the new zoning, there would be no short-term rentals.
Perfect, then I would be okay with it.
Okay, thanks for your comments. And the reason that I brought this back for a revote is because so many people I talked to did not understand what they currently could do as opposed to what they're applying to do. It's still 6 units. It is a bigger footprint, I think, this way, but it's still 6 units of accommodation. Anyone else in the audience that would like to have some words? Ms. Edwards?
That's confusing. Okay, I gotta move this thing down. I'm Elizabeth Edwards. I live at 1367 Helen Road. I have lived there since 1980, and I've seen the traffic grow and grow and grow. There's a lovely little hill just past my place, and it seems to be a NASCAR drive many times. That's what I go through. That's what I see. And I hate to tell you this, but one of the worst culprits for speeding along Helen Road are the people picking up their children from school, because they come along Peninsula and they park on this side, and then they swing around and they come back on Helen because they can't do a U-turn. So I've had the police out there a few times to see if they could see, or just put the fear of God into people. But unfortunately, didn't get any speeders that day. But it's a nightmare along there. I've asked a couple of times. I haven't written it formally, but I've asked a couple of times to have some of those nice speed bumps. Not that plastic thing, but just to stop it, because everyone does the same thing. They come along Helen, they see that little hill, and then they speed up and go over the top, and it's the same go on the other way. So I'm not in favor of this at all. It just, I was not in favor of the high focus thing. It's just going to create more traffic, and I spoke to the developer there, and they said, "Oh, well, we're going to put a sidewalk along Helen to Marine." I was like, I don't know where you're going to get the land to do that with, but I don't know. It seems crazy, but anyways, so that was my spur of the moment rant. Okay, thanks.
Thank you for your comments. Are there any other members of the public in attendance that would like to speak?
My name is Paul. I'm the designer of this project.
You can lift the microphone up so
Yeah,
you don't have to
so,
bend over.
Excuse
And so your full name and where you live, please.
Paul Jan. I live in Vancouver. So I'm the designer of this project. Sorry, my English is not that good. So I just have a few things to say. As the mayor said just now, we are following the same zoning requirement for 6 units to do the rezoning. Actually, we're helping to change the rental, that kind of proposal to a long-term living unit. So this helped to solve the shortage of housing problem. And for the traffic, that kind of stuff, I don't think it will be a impact to the society because the traffic is still very slow here, comparing to Vancouver, of course. So I hope this project can be approved, as what we said in the email. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Anyone else in attendance that would like to speak? Okay, are there any members of the public attending by Zoom that wish to speak? Click the raise hand icon.
Matt, if you want to unmute.
Sure thing. How's that?
Perfect.
Welcome.
Awesome. It's Matt Harbage, 1816 Peninsula. I don't live near this project, but we have to be really careful about how we throw the word obtainable, affordable, all these words around. It's truly not until it's sponsored by CMHC and things like that. And I've heard that a few times in this meeting. There's no dollar value set on these homes, so there's no such thing as affordable attached to it. There's no obtainable attached to it. So these are fair market value homes at the developer's discretion. So that's just being, put out there always as a word. Crystal Fave used it for St. Jake's, and he's used it a lot in Tofino, but it's the same thing. Every developer uses those words, but what's the proof? I think as a town, when it's being said at a council meeting, those words can't be used to describe these developments. All right, thanks. Bye.
Thanks, Matt. Are there any other attendees on Zoom with their hands raised?
Yes, Nancy L., if you want to unmute.
I have done so, thank you. Nancy Lobaugh, 790 Rainforest Drive. Like Matt, I don't live in the area, but I've been following this application since the initial presentation in February. A few main points. Thank you, Madam Mayor, for making the first one for me, is that the density has not increased with this requested change from R2 to multifamily residential. 6 units in both cases. The new piece of information about the density that might be of use to some people who have commented on in the past, excuse me, is that there's a letter on page 182 of the agenda from the designer that indicated that the actual living unit area may only be 1,500 square feet rather than 2,500 square feet that some people have estimated. So these are going to not be huge, potentially not be huge buildings, even though they do have a similar FAR as the current R2 is allowing. One thing the neighbors might want to consider as well, in terms of whether they're objecting to this or not and what the council wants to do going forward. If this is kept as R2, there could potentially be a 3-story main house with 3 B&Bs and a 2-story ADU on that property based on the new legislation and bylaw 1346/2024 that was just approved. So the BC's allowing for taller, both main houses and ADUs. So what's that going to look like? And I can't say because that's not what the design is now. It's only for 2 stories. And again, if it's changed to multifamily residential, there are restrictions in place that do not allow short-term rentals. And by this, relative to 3 B&Bs, would reduce the traffic down Helen from this development. In terms of parking and traffic, there's an increase of 4 parking spots from changing from R2 to multifamily. There are 9 spots for the owners, 1 for visitors, although that is a minimum. And I'm wondering, and this is something for staff probably, could that minimum be added as a maximum to bylaw 1322? Or would it be enforced at the building permit stage? Because what we don't, I think, want to see down there is for them to exceed the minimum that they're allowed. And right now, there are more than allowed spots in the draft that was presented. One thing for the developer is something that I don't know whether staff has any input into this, but this is going to be a strata, and the owner developer should be encouraged to amend the Strata Act when they submit it to formally designate which of the 3 units can be sold with 2 parking spaces. Because with 9 spots for six owners, somebody's going to get 2 and the others are going to only have 1 parking space. And whether they want to then also try to restrict the number of vehicles by also say you can either park on your driveway or in the garage, but not both, which would right now looks like it applies to units 1, 5, and 6. Those kinds of things in the strata, the modifications to the Strata Act could help the neighborhood by enforcing the lower number of vehicles. So again, it's only increasing by 4 parking spots from what's currently allowed if it stays as R2 and it's fully built out. People are concerned about changing the OCP. This was presented in February 27th that council could have done a change because it is related to housing without changing the OCP, but there's a sense, and this is on page 59 of the current agenda, that it would be, in the spirit of transparency, it would be a good idea to change the OCP to match the new zoning if that was going to go forward. And one thing that, if people don't live here full time, this is, people are going to want to maybe live in here for 2 months out of the year. That also will reduce the traffic if they're not full-time residents. But the district still gets around $30,000 in property taxes from it. So that actually could help the district at some level. And affordability issues was not required to be assessed because it's at the limit of the threshold for determining that. And it sounds like, and again, this is just words, but it sounds like it's being considered in the letter on page 182. Last meeting in July, I believe it was, the issue of green space came up, and it looks like there's more than is actually needed left on this property if it is converted to multifamily residential. The qualified environmental professional indicated that there was, if they left 15 meters from the shoreline, it would preserve the wildlife corridor. This is on page 131 of your agenda. The developer is proposing a 20-meter setback, so a much deeper shoreline setback than what would be required for the movement of animals through the area. So there, I actually don't object to it based on the numbers. It is going to be unique in the area, and it's going to have to be something for council to decide if it's too unique. But it's kind of like the devil you know versus the devil you don't. And somebody, can come in there and really build it out, and you'd have more traffic if it was, 3 B&Bs in that single family house and 2 additional rental units. So I actually don't particularly object to it and wouldn't object to something like this if it happened in my neighborhood. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for your comments. Is there anyone else with their hand raised on Zoom?
Todd and Sarah, if you'd like to speak, just unmute.
Yeah, unmuted now. Todd Evelina, and I'd like to withhold my address because the last time I submitted a letter, I received some threats from members of our community. So I could encourage Marilyn to confirm that I'm a resident because I'm a member of the Accessibility Committee. But I do live in Ucluelet and do not wish to be harassed. I think we've reached a crossroads in this community where housing has become a topic of maybe a political football where we want it to be developed in other neighborhoods, but not our own. And I respect and agree with some of the opinions that were mentioned by distinguished members of the community who spoke against this earlier. But there's a middle ground to balance this where density is held in relation to the needs of the community. And I haven't seen the same objection to increases of density. For instance, in a couple months ago, Majestic Ocean had increased the number of rental units on that property. And there are Airbnbs at the end of High Focus that don't reach the same scrutiny that some of these new proposals reach. And I hear the points where there's a concern about, investor developers who are not from here versus developers who are from here, and where money stays in the community and where it doesn't. There's a balance where we do need to act on the housing crisis. And if we continue to say no and say not in my backyard, we end up in a stalemate where there are no net new homes created for community members. So I do think this proposal and the guidance of council needs to yield some scrutiny on how and why these properties are developed. Sorry, I have a fussy child on my lap who I'm bouncing while I'm speaking. And I do think that council has some diligence to ensure that this property is developed in a way that actually results in homes for the community. But I disagree with the sentiment that all density is bad density. And I also, feel an obligation to point out just like conflict of interest and some of the other aspects of this. I don't know if this justifies conflict of interest, but Councillor Anderson, I know your spouse has written in response to this, and I want you to hold, the residents on a road with your role as a councillor and think about the full perspective of the community in how this proceeds. Because if we can't develop on Helen Road and we can't develop on Marine and we can't develop on High Focus and we can't develop on the far end of Peninsula, where do we develop? And I think we need to move some of these projects forward. So I don't think it's perfect how it is, like many other folks have said. But if we're creating homes for members of our community, I think we should take a balanced look at how we do that in a responsible way. So thank you for your time. I appreciate that this has reached another reading and reconsideration. And I'll mute because I need to address a baby. So thanks.
Thank you for your comments. Are there any other members with their hands raised on Zoom?
If anyone else wishes to speak, please raise your hand. No hands are raised.
Thank you. Are there any speakers calling in? Press star 9 if you wish to speak.
I see none.
And have we received any unpublished correspondence about the bylaws, including any unpublished emails to communityinput@ucluelet.ca?
None have come in since the late agenda items.
And does council have any questions for staff? All right, this is the second call for speakers, and I would encourage new comments. Are there any members of the public attending in person who wish to speak to bylaw number 1337, 2024, or bylaw number 1322, 2024? Seeing none, are there any speakers on Zoom with their hands raised?
No hands are raised at this time.
And are there any speakers calling in?
I see none.
And have we received any additional written public input?
No public input via email.
All right, this is the third and final call. Are there any members of the public attending in person who wish to speak to the bylaws? Seeing none, are there any speakers on Zoom with their hands raised?
No hands are raised.
And are there any speakers calling in?
I see none.
And have we received any new emails?
And no emails.
All right, I now declare the public hearing for District of Ucluelet Official Community Plan Amendment Bylaw number 1337, 2024, and District of Ucluelet Zoning Amendment Bylaw number 1322, 2024, closed at 4:46 p.m. We are now moving on to unfinished business. There is one unfinished business item 7.1, clarification regarding section 4, brackets 1 of the District of Ucluelet Development Application Procedures Bylaw 1350. And this will be presented by Mr. Gregg.
Thank you, through the mayor. So this question came up, really it was around this section, I believe, just to clarify, the question was around essentially why the new bylaw for the Development Application Procedures Bylaw, which is Bylaw 1350, which has recently been adopted, why Section 4.1 requires a unanimous council vote to sort of amend or suspend the procedures. And so we've given it some thought, and I have an answer for you. Actually, there's two reasons. Really, essentially, in sort of higher level, if a bylaw is establishing sort of the rules or procedures, essentially it councils then, so that's established by bylaw, and if later during a meeting or in the process of things, that those rules are essentially being changed or suspended, then essentially the approach, and this is fairly common, is that everyone has to agree. I'm sure there's some legal terminology for all of that, but that's at least how I understand it as a non-lawyer. But so essentially this clause, and I'll read it, says any one or more of the procedures in this bylaw except those that are governed by statutory provisions may be temporarily suspended by unanimous vote of the council present. And so that's what this clause says. That is verbatim unchanged from the old application procedures bylaw that was adopted in 2015. So effectively that's how it has worked for the last 10 years. So really it was something that we didn't think that needed to change. So there it is. So it could be altered, I suppose. The other answer or a bit of perspective I'd provide is that this is similar in some other things. So in the council procedures bylaw, bylaw 1300, which council adopts for like its meeting procedures and whatnot. Similarly, I think there's 5 cases within the bylaw where the rules can be changed or altered by unanimous vote. So things like the notice of special council meeting, the extension of the period of public input, considering a request for action by a delegation, and extending the length of the question period, or the last one is where waiving a requirement to deliver a copy of a bylaw to council 24 hours ahead of when it's introduced in a meeting. All of those things need unanimous vote of council. So this is sort of the pattern. So I just wanted to put out that context, and hopefully that answers the question of where that line came from in the bylaw. So I'll just see if there's any questions from council.
Thank you for that explanation. I think it was just, it wasn't that we thought it was something new, it's just that we suddenly noticed it.
Absolutely fair.
Any questions for staff? No? Okay, well, thank you so much.
Thank you.
And we are moving into bylaws. There are 2 bylaw items. The first bylaw item is 8.1, rezoning and OCP amendment for 1061 Helen Road. A public hearing on the subject bylaws was conducted just earlier today. As I explained during the public hearing, a motion to give third reading to Ucluelet Official Community Plan Amendment Bylaw number 1337/2024 was defeated at the June 25th, 2024 regular council meeting. As a result, third reading of District of Ucluelet Zoning Amendment Bylaw number 1322/2024 and Development Permit DP 22-13 were not considered. At the July 9th regular meeting, Council reviewed an email from the applicant's agent requesting that third reading of Official Community Plan Amendment Bylaw number 1337/2024 be reconsidered. At this time, I relied on Section 131 of the Community Charter to require that Council reconsider this matter. Rather than voting again on third reading of the Official Community Plan Bylaw on July 9th, the vote was deferred to today so a second public hearing could be held. The motion to be, the motion to be reconsidered is that Council give third reading to District of Ucluelet Official Community Plan Amendment Bylaw number 1337/2024. This motion is now before Council for discussion as if it had never been voted on but was moved and seconded. Are there any questions for staff, for starters?
I just have a very quick question through the mayor. This is really just to put it on the record because so much of the conversation and correspondence that I've personally received seems to hinge on this issue. And I would just like it confirmed that currently, as it sits right now, the zoning for the property in question allows short-term rentals. And if the amendment is adopted, short-term rental will not be a permitted use. Can you confirm if that is correct or refute it if it's not?
That is correct, but I'll have Mr. Gregg confirm.
Through the mayor, correct. Today, the bed and breakfast is a permitted accessory use to the single family residence, which would be permitted on the property.
Thank you.
And what's being proposed is that the zoning would change to allow 6 units, but that they be residential, not bed and breakfast. No bed and breakfast allowed, no short-term rental of them, that they be residential. So either occupied by the owner or a tenant could occupy it.
Thank you.
Councillor Anderson?
Through the mayor, of all the single-family homes that all in Ucluelet allow the same thing that we're talking about, up to 3 guest suites and an ADU, of all those houses, how many percentage-wise would you say take advantage of that and max out an ADU and have the other 3 units plus a guest suite and 3 guest rooms? Do you know what number that would be approximately?
Through the mayor, I'd hesitate to say off the top of my head what percentage. We could certainly come back and provide that.
But like, how many do you think max out all those short-term rental? Like, how many single-family lots max out that amount that they would do for short-term rental? Just off the top of your head, like percentage-wise.
Well, again, through the mayor, there's few properties max out everything according to their zoning. For one thing, up until very recently, a property that had a single-family property that had a couple of different accessory uses, secondary suite and bed and breakfast, and the property owner was not allowed to have both at the same time, and that has changed. So very few of the houses that have bed and breakfast would also have a secondary suite. Some of the bed and breakfasts actually replace the secondary suite. So, sorry, I don't have statistics on those numbers.
No, that's totally fine. I get it. Yeah, no, thank you.
Sure.
Any other questions for staff? All right, I'll open it up for discussion for council. Anyone have any comments? Councillor Hoare, anything from you?
I'm just going to comment. I'm glad everybody's been clarifying that this went from being 6 units, 3 of which were short-term rentals, to being, if we do the rezoning, would allow 6 units that are nothing but long-term rentals. I think that's a really valid part of this. And this is one of those things that if it were left without the rezoning, I think we could potentially see, because it's a larger property, we could map out that development with all of the things they're allowed under the current single family, which is problematic. And I hear you, everybody who is giving us the, you know, I know it's a narrow road. I walked it. I do walk it. I mean, obviously not in the last short while, but I will walk it again. And I worry about increased traffic, but 6 long-term residents is not a vast increase in traffic. Anyway, I'm in a rambling mood today. Sorry.
That's no problem.
But I just think that it's just really valid to be aware of that there wouldn't be short-term rentals allowed. Goes through. I think that's important.
Great, thank you. Councillor Anderson?
Yeah, that's where I totally agree with what you're saying. I don't think we need more short-term rentals necessarily, but I also just have to be careful with the idea that, well, first of all, if we say there's going to be a single family house or a duplex with an ADU, 1 guest suite and 3 guest rooms, you're talking about the maximum that you could possibly do. And I think most people don't do that. And I know that's not a great argument for the people that are against STRs, and that's fine. I get that. But my major, if I had to say, there was 10 letters at least of people who were vehemently opposed. So I have to represent some of the points that they made. And I think they're valid. I think they make sense. And the idea is that I don't think any of those folks are against density, and I'm certainly not against density. And I know we have some projects in the go right now that are based on density. We have Lot 16 where we're, I think, making some headway, and we've got a couple others in the queue that are closer to the downtown core of the village square that makes sense for that number to be there. This piece of land, this whole high focus was zoned to be R2 or R1 and then R2, so in a mixed rural, originally with a prohibition on multifamily residential. And I wonder why that was. And the only thing I can think of is that road, that pinch point that Ms. Evetank had brought up, was there's nowhere to put a sidewalk, and one vehicle has to stop to let another vehicle go by. It's arguably the narrowest road in town, with a cliff of granite on one side and a drop on the other where Keith Martin's house is. And there's just nowhere for children to go or people walking to go. There just isn't. And even the developer from McKistick said it's extremely problematic. And they don't know how to do a sidewalk, and they said they might even look at routing one somewhere else, and which I don't know how they're going to do that. He even said that their engineers haven't been able to come up with even an idea there. So my problem is with even the way that the island is right now. I feel like the ingress and egress is such an issue, whether it's emergency services getting in and out in the event of a fire or an emergency, or just people walking up that road. There's nowhere to go. I mean, we all walk that road regularly, and we know that it's a bit of a gamble. So adding density at all there, and I am for density. I'm for housing, 100%. I'm just thinking that putting something on the edge of town on a tiny island with one way in and one way out on the narrowest road in town is a recipe for disaster. And I think that that's what people are getting at in their letters that they wrote. And then, also it's making a change to an OCP. It's our community plan. It's not, we came up with that and voted on it for our community. Like, to have someone ask as a developer to come in and make an amendment to that OCP for their benefit, for a sale in this case. To me, it seems like, okay, well, let's take a step back and say, is this the best place for this? The walkability score that we're aiming for, what we call walkability, is 400 meters. In this case, this is 1,200. It's 3 times that. If you didn't have a vehicle, I'm not sure it would be the best place to have like a high density situation. The original ask from this developer was for 11 units, 11 two-story units, which is 9 buildings plus 1 duplex with 20 parking spaces on a single family home, which kind of tells you where the heart is on this one. It's someone to make your money as a developer, it's much to come in and get a single family lot and upzone it is where you're going to get your meat and potatoes on that. But there's already existing multifamily lots in town that could have been used. Like Nora, Forbes, there's Rainforest, there's several places. But instead, they're choosing a place that was single family and upzoning. And again, I'm not against density or upzoning single family. I think on Peninsula it totally makes sense. There's a bunch of places in town close to Village Square where you could walk to get groceries that make sense. But putting it in a place that is just like downright dangerous to walk, and there's nowhere in sight that we can see a path forward for a sidewalk to get through there. I just think it's not a matter of if, it's when someone's going to get hit there. So adding more people to a place that's already problematic for pedestrian traffic is to me, that's a remiss decision, and I can't say yes to that because it's already a dangerous situation, and adding more people to that situation, I think, is just it doesn't feel like the right decision for me.
So what are you going to say? I don't know why this went really wonky, this sound.
It's
Reverb. What are you going to say when Acoustics comes forward with their plan?
I feel this, similarly with Acoustics, I said, if you could figure out, there's children on that island, and it's a nightmare for them to walk up that road. So I said, if you can figure that out, like, I'm not against that. I'm just against like the risk of safety. And when we talk about doing density, I'm slightly worried that it's like going grocery shopping when you're really hungry. We're so hungry for something right now, even though we've got these other things in the queue, that we're willing to jump on something right away because there's density, there's housing. We think this is going to satisfy that, and it will to some degree. But I think it's at the cost of safety in that case with the road. And I'm sorry to go back to your question about Acoustics. And I had said to the developer from Acoustics, Paul Russo, I said, if you can show me a way forward with the sidewalk getting in there and just that infrastructure, then I would be swayed on that. I know that that's important to me. And he said it's a real pickle and they don't know how they're going to do that. And I said, but if I saw that, if that was something that we had a plan for, and we could put a covenant, for example, for a larger development, I would be for that.
So in the meantime, this current proposal you're not in favor of because of the traffic.
Right, that's correct.
So you think there's going to be a lot more cars if they rezone to the multifamily?
Well, I think I do, because if you have, like, say there's 6 units that are going in there, and I'm not sure if they can each have another long-term unit in each of those 6. So we're saying at least 6 times 2, there's 12 cars. So you're increasing it by 12 cars, and it's already a bit crazy on that road as it is right now. The argument, I guess, is that I think you were saying before, is that if you leave the zoning the way it is, that people are going to be, you could max it out and you could have these 3 people in guest rooms, 1 in a guest suite, ADU, and then it's kind of the same thing. But my point is that very few people actually do that in town. And it's not like you're saying, well, this could happen, but it's very few people do that. And there's more than likely, well, I'm not going to say more than likely, but more than half of the ones, like Mrs. Evetink that was here, she's got a long-term renter. She's got 1 person in her place. And I think when you sort of have this grandiose, like, oh, we're all going to have these rooms all over our house, I don't necessarily think that that's going to happen. But if you put in 6 full-time units, you will definitely have at least 6 to 10 vehicles on a regular basis because they're full-time residents living on that patch line.
I think there would be more vehicles if they max out and have the 3 guest rooms.
I mean, it's possible.
Okay. Mr. Rotenberg, could you come and look at this sound for me, please?
Need like a pedal when you want to sound really imposing. And now we call the question.
Now we call the question. That's much better. Thank you.
Can you make mine more imposing?
Okay. Councillor Kennington.
Oh. Yeah. For me, I love the idea of densifying single-family lots where it makes sense. And I went down there today with a measuring tape, and I measured the road 16 feet wide of the pavement. And then I measured to the cliff from the edge of the road 7 feet. And then I measured where you could reasonably expand the road, which was another 2 feet. There's areas where it's 6 feet. So when you look at the development plans, the entrance to the site is 20 feet, and that is considered to be what is necessary for emergency vehicles and access. So we don't even have that on the road leading to that. So at what point do you say, oh, it's good enough that it's 20 feet here, but we're just going to let it go at 16 up there, when even fire apparatus requires 14 feet if it's a one-way access or a roundabout. So the challenge here is that the road is insufficient to support any expansion of any density, period, on that island. I mean, if you were to look at the whole island as a development, the planning department would turn it down based on that 16-foot entrance to the site if you called High Focus the site. Now, 16 feet plus 7 feet plus 2 feet is 25 feet. It's reasonable to assume that you could get a road and a sidewalk in there. The sidewalk would have to be culverted underneath it for the runoff off of that cliff, but it is possible. But that's not the situation today, and until it is that situation, I don't think it's supportable. So if the developer wants to expand that road and build that sidewalk, then they should have to do that just like any other developer would have to do that on their own site. And I think we just include that road as part of this project and subject to that redevelopment of the road.
You're talking about the Acoustics project.
I'm talking about any project. Any project that requires a rezoning should have to meet all the criteria of a development, and that that criteria extends to a 20-foot access. We don't have that currently leading to the site, so until we have that, I don't think it's supportable. But on the flip side, I love the project. I think it's a great idea, and I think it does fit the property. I think there's so much that's good about it, but at the end of the day, I think it may be just too soon for that piece of property. If coming down the line, if Acoustics was able to put that road in there, and I'm convinced that they could do it, and I'm not sure why they said they couldn't, because as I said, I went down there. It's not my first rodeo. It could be done, but like I say, it's not done. So it's 16 feet. It's not wide enough.
Great, thank you for that. Councillor Mafty.
I've thought about this one a lot, and I've had a lot of conversations with people. I voted against it to begin with the first time it came around. To be completely honest, I don't even know that I've made up my mind how I'd like to vote this time. I will say, though, just to go on the record briefly, just because I have had so many conversations with people that I assume at least some of them are going to follow up with me. I agree with a lot of what I've heard from different councillors and from the general public. The issues that I find I'm getting hung up on are the density. Every single Councillor Anderson's comments notwithstanding, every single one of these letters cites the density. And the reality here is that the current permission is to build 6 units. The proponent wants to build 6 units. I agree that we're sort of taking a guess at whether or not they would max it out, but they certainly have permission to do that. And if all of these suppositions that this person's in it for the money to maximize their investment are true, then they probably will max it out. So we're still talking about 6 units versus 6 units. As someone who's vocally, vehemently against short-term rentals, the fact that short-term rental would be taken off the table as a permitted use is something that attracts me. The road issues, to be perfectly honest, I feel like I see where they're coming from, but a lot of them are overblown. I've got kids too. I'm about to speak later on in the meeting about road safety and how it impacts all of us. So I don't want anyone to think that I'm not, concerned about road safety. But at the end of the day, the roads in this community and in most communities are there for vehicles. And if we want any increase in development and in the number of residences and residents, we're going to see an increase in the number of vehicles. So this is an issue almost anywhere. I also really struggle with the notion that this to me, no disrespect to the proponent, this is kind of small fry, because we know that we're dealing with another proponent from the Acoustics group. A lot of the people that reach out to me didn't even realize that these were 2 separate projects, and they conflated them. And if we say no to this project for these reasons, I don't understand how anyone who would vote no in good conscience could vote yes for anything else on High Focus. Me personally, that doesn't bother me, but it does seem to be a little bit of a taking a shot at low-hanging fruit. And then the final thing that I want to say that it's kind of neither here nor there, but a lot of what I've heard, and even in some of this correspondence, I mean, to say it's NIMBYism is stating the obvious, but I'm a little bit upset at what I've perceived to be almost this, like, to call it what it is a subtext of racism. I've heard a lot about who the developers are, where they're from. To my mind, that doesn't make sense. And I'll just say on the record for myself, anyone who appeals to me as a counselor to make decisions because I should be supporting one group of people or otherwise prioritizing, versus another, that to my mind, that holds no water at all. And I was really disappointed to hear a lot of that. So I'm really of two minds. On the one hand, I actually agree with Councillor Kennington. If we're going to have development, this, to my mind, is exactly what everyone keeps suggesting is the logical way forward. And when I say everyone, I mean the feds, the province, like people who look at this issue say we need to increase the density on single family lots. I do have to say I don't necessarily know that this is the lot for it. So I've disagreed with a lot of what Councillor Anderson said, but one point that really did strike me that I do agree with, and I myself have raised this issue on other topics, is the OCP is the community's plan. And I really struggle with reassessing the OCP based on any one proponent's request for us to do that. A zoning variance or something, that's fine. Like that's the bread and butter of development. But I've been really upset and hurt in the past when councils have made decisions to sort of override the intention and the scope of the OCP in a way that I felt really favored one developer or one development. And for that reason, like, that carries way more water than a lot of the other contrapoints. So that's a long ramble. I'm really on the fence on this one.
I don't want to counter your point about the OCP, but one thing to remember about the OCP is it's a snapshot in time. And it's a living document, so it's ever evolving, and this is how we evolve that document as a community. So every once in a while we rewrite it and we amalgamate all the ideas and all the amendments, and that is how an OCP is written. So to say that it's a set in stone document that we all live by doesn't take into account the realities like the pandemic, climate change, housing crisis. Like, these things are very dynamic, and the OCP cannot be static. So I just want to point that out because I hear it a lot about, the OCP is the word of God, and it's not. It's a document that we are here to write together as we move forward. So that's just my only point to that. Everything else
I agree on that point, and it strikes me that there is a difference between the council as representatives of the community taking information in and saying, hey, we should really consider amending or adjusting the OCP to account for these new realities, versus a situation where a developer comes in and just sort of walks into the room and says, what I'd like to do isn't consistent with your OCP, so I would like you to amend your OCP. I understand that it can boil down to the same thing, but the mechanism to me is important. But I hear your point, and I agree that it's not like, yeah, hammered into a monolith. It's a living document that reflects changes in the community, but it's who's pushing for those changes and why that I think we should at least consider when we do decide whether or not to make the amendment. So I don't disagree.
Absolutely, and that's why we're here. And no one's going to come to us and say, hey, I think you should amend the OCP to do this hypothetical thing. It's like, no, there's a need, and somebody sees that need and tries to fulfill it. So they bring this amendment or this application for an amendment forward, and we go, hey, does this make sense? Because it would make sense here. Does this have broader implications? Could we apply this across the board? And that's how we write it.
And our current OCP was done during COVID, and there was very little opportunity for in-person attendance at events. Well, no opportunity actually for in-person attendance at events to provide updates to it. But like you said, it's a living document, so it is it's a groundwork for us to go by. I think what I'm hearing is that the application to create this housing is great. The location is maybe not so great.
The location's great. It's the road.
It's the road. That's why.
It's a large lot, right? So you look at this lot, and if you look at an aerial view of all the lots, you could fit like eight regular city lots on that. So it's not a case of jamming things in. It's a huge lot that can support a lot of density. It's in the FAR, so it's not really going to have much different of a feel or flavor from just a regular, like up Helen Road where the lots are smaller. It's going to have that same appearance as a residential neighborhood. But again, I keep sticking on that road. And like I said, I went down there, and it's not a joke. It's 16 feet wide. Like a car is 8 feet wide. You know, like you'd be clipping mirrors if you tried to pass somebody on that road. So until we address that, and I think we should address it. So I don't want to say no, and I'm totally on the fence because I think we can fix that problem. So I don't know where we take that from here, but you know, we need to look at the development and everything back to where access is no longer a problem. So I don't know which way I would go on this, to be honest.
Councillor Anderson?
You already know what I said. Yeah, I did. I don't know. I find that if you were, you know, I picture a couple of kids walking on there, and then a truck's coming by. They've got, you know, if they're on the cliffside, they jump into that, you know, little ditch there, and then it's tiny, or they jump over the other side. It's
like in Stand By Me when the train's coming down.
Exactly like Stand By Me. Exactly like Stand By Me. So, yeah, I wouldn't. I just don't want to have. I don't want to hang my hat on that one and have that come back. It's a safety thing for me.
Would it be possible to have staff look at that road and what the possibility for widening it would be prior to giving a decision on this? Like if it's realistic or not, because it'd be really good to know, because that question's going to keep coming up, because people are going to keep on trying to do stuff on high focus, and something's going to happen, and so we're going to have to address that road. Somebody's going to have to pay for it. So the sooner developers start pitching in to pay for that road, the less the rest of the community is going to have to come up with to build that road when it inevitably becomes a problem.
So, I'll refer that to Mr. Lawrence for comment.
With respect to staff looking at that road width and the expandability of it, like roads can be widened, it's just a matter of cost. And in that location, because of the narrow neck that we're dealing with, I would assume that the cost would be substantial. That being said, if the numbers that Councillor Kennington was indicating, that there could be expanding that road by a foot or 2 feet or 3 feet or whatever the case may be, might be possible with the addition of additional asphalt, if that space works, which would be, could be a quick fix, and provide increased road width, and it wouldn't cost overly that much. But we could do some investigation if that's council's prerogative. Council can, and council is not under any obligation to undertake a vote at the, you can defer the final vote on this to a future date. I don't believe, and I can confirm with Mr. Rotenberg, a new public hearing would not be required because you've had that, you've received all the commentary, you're having discussion, you want more information, you can refer that back to staff for additional details.
To my mind, a majority of the concerns are about the road width, which, any of the concerns about density and the character of the neighborhood and all that, none of that holds water for me as far as, where we need to go as a community and the housing we need to build. So the real sticking point for me was the last time, which is why I turned it down, and still today is that road's too narrow. But from my calculations, even if we didn't expand to the water side, even if that was the edge of the road, you could still do a 20-foot road and a 3-foot sidewalk, or a 4-foot sidewalk, and that would even give you a foot for a drainage ditch if you didn't want to culvert it. So I know it's possible. And I went to the narrowest part, the most impossible part that you would think. There's a little there's a driveway that goes down just after the pump station, and right there, and then there's a drop, and that's where I said, okay, you got 2 feet max. But even if the existing road alignment stays on the water side, you could still get 24 feet. So you look at the sidewalks even on Peninsula in front of the co-op and whatnot. They're 3 feet wide. So we could have that size of sidewalk and not cut into that cliff at all, and still have a 20-foot road. So I think it's possible. But I'd like to explore that, so we can at least get that out of the way, and we can really get down to brass tacks as to what the issue is, because we need the density, and but we need to do it right.
All right, so what I'm hearing is that we want to defer a decision on this particular bylaw.
I would move to defer until such time as we have at least a staff investigation into the feasibility of widening that road.
Okay, do I have a seconder?
I'll second that.
Okay.
But I'd follow up by, and sorry to preempt you, but I assumed you were going to say if there's any further discussion.
That's what I was going to say, yeah.
It's funny, I don't disagree with anything Councillor Kennington's saying, but I see this road width as a red herring. To be totally honest, if I had to bet money, all of these letters would, if they say, yeah, you can widen the road, they'd all come back and it would all be the same stuff. Oh, they're from Asia. Oh, it's the character of the neighborhood. Oh, I've lived here and I don't want this neighbor. Oh, the road's still very narrow. Like, and I'm not saying that some of those concerns are invalid, but I hear the rest of them. And for that reason alone, I kind of feel like, well, let's kick the can down the road. But if we hear back, I'm like, okay, well, what's the next step? Let's say we hear back, and now we're spending the time of our tax-paid employees to go and do the work of a developer, and they say, yeah, you can actually meet the requirement. It's going to be close, it's going to be tight, but it's going to be doable. We're going to be right back where we are today, and so maybe that'll just give us more chance to think about it. And that's also going to sort of raise the question of, well, all right, great. So now who's going to do it? And if it's doable, someone's going to do it. And then Ekistics and all of these other people, like, in a way, it would be good to clear that up. In another way, I feel like it's going to sort of open the floodgates. And I think that we really need to ask ourselves, well, what are we saying no to? And my read on it is that the road, like I said, it is a red herring. People's objection to this project, and I hear the objection, and I'm here to represent those people, whether I agree with them or not. It goes a lot deeper than how wide the road is. And so I would just say, like, sure, if that's what we got to do, let's do that. But, like, let's be ready to have this exact same discussion again and be talking about, all of the other objections that we still are going to need to grapple with.
I think, I agree with you again. But as I said, the other arguments don't hold water for me. So the only thing that's stopping this is the road width, as far as I'm concerned. So it's a valid point. Who's going to pay for it? But essentially, could be saying, widen the road and you can and proceed.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So maybe
yeah.
it's something like that. It's a conditional approval subject to widening that road at that pinch point.
And I think that was the common thread with those letters.
The road was a common thread. And the reason I brought it back for discussion is because so many people I talked to did not understand what the owner of that property can do under the current zoning
Agreed.
versus what they're applying to do. They're giving up the short-term rentals and providing 6 homes for people.
6 homes, there stands to be a substantial amount of profit on that, and looking at that road, I don't think it's a substantial amount of money to fix it. So if they want to fix it, and build your 6 units.
So would you even consider
Or a latecomer agreement with Acoustics. Like maybe they get together with Acoustics and figure out who pays what percentage and get it done, and then we have a safer road for the community and a nice walkway to get down to High Focus, which we don't currently have for the community to use.
So I think by deferring this motion and having staff investigate the what it would cost to fix Helen Road, would give everybody time to kind of get their heads around what the real issues are. And most of the letters did cite the Helen Road as the major issue, as well as density, which is kind of not the case because it's 6 units versus 6 units.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But safety is always a tough one. If we go and approve this and somebody's kid gets run over, I don't want to be that person that said it was okay to have a 16-foot wide road.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. Mr. Lawrence.
Just a note, Council. So because there's a public hearing and that has been concluded, if this is deferred, that means that Council can't receive any more information on this from the public. So it still retains specifically with Council. So just a word of caution, getting more and more public input from it, you need to refrain from that as Council to ensure the integrity of the public hearing and the process.
We understand that, yes.
Yeah, and so through this public hearing, we've heard the concerns and now we're addressing them so that we can move forward to everybody's benefit.
Yes, and if anything, I think the discussion here today has cleared up a lot of misunderstandings that the public has had. Especially about density and usage and number of units and number of parking spaces and all that sort of stuff. That's it's really boils down to the Helen Road. So we have a motion to defer and a seconder. Any further discussion?
Jen, does you have anything to say about?
No. Okay. All right, we'll vote to defer. All in favor? None opposed, that carries. Great discussion. Thank you, everybody. The next bylaw item is 8.2, Records Management Bylaw Update Adoption. This bylaw has received 3 readings. Are there any questions for Mr. Rotenberg? All right, would council like to make a motion?
I can do this.
Okay, Councillor Anderson.
I'll move that council adopt records management bylaw number 1353, 2024.
Do I have Councillor Mafty seconds? Any further discussion? All in favor? None opposed, that carries. Thank you. There are 3 report items. The first report item is 9.1 Peninsula Road paving update and line paint options. The Director of Engineering Services will present this report. Welcome, Mr. McIntosh.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Madam Mayor and Council. So this report and presentation in front of you is about paving Section 3 of Peninsula Road and line painting configuration options. The staff recommendation for this report and presentation is option A, to upgrade the configuration, improve it, and that drawing is included in your appendix under appendix number A. The drawings are also added to the Peninsula Road Project website for anybody's review. Just waiting for our presentation to load here. Thank you. Oh, 1 second. Just waiting for me to find the clicker here. Thank you. So in April of 2024, this year, Council approved a $2.5 million funding agreement between the district and the Ministry of Transportation and Infrastructure to repave Peninsula Road. The project included a change order of the same figure and an amendment to the Hazelwood construction contract. The conditions in that agreement were to spend all the money this year, as much as we can, don't exceed the budget, and it can only be spent on Peninsula Road. So in July, happy to share that we, of course, completed that paving. So we completed section 1 from Seaplane Base Road to Bay Street, and then extended the paving from Bay Street towards Forbes. So both of those sections were completed just in time to welcome the Yuki Day Parade. After completing sections 1 and 2, there's about $500,000 remaining in the funding agreement that's available to reallocate back into paving Peninsula Road for further paving. That $500,000 is estimated to be just enough to complete what we're now calling section 3. And section 3 is from Bay Street to the corner of Main Street. And so this section was recently deprioritized because of a couple of reasons. We were concerned about overspending and available funds. There's utilities under this section that have to be replaced at some point. And also, it was outside of the Peninsula Road project scope, so we deferred it. It's now reprioritized because we have available funds to complete the project. We must spend all the capital this year, and the condition of the asphalt is very deteriorated, so it makes the next logical piece to complete. This section from Main to, it's actually just the crosswalk in front of the brewery, is about 300 meters for our section number 3. And the configuration of this section includes 2 travel lanes, a pedestrian sidewalk on the western side, fairly unformal parking, and then no pedestrian sidewalk or facilities on the eastern side. Let's zoom in. So the existing condition and configuration on the top of Bay Street on your screen is very deteriorated beyond its useful life asphalt. This is standing on Bay Street, on Peninsula Road looking north towards Bay Street. So very deteriorated asphalt. On the western side, there's a sidewalk. On the eastern side, there's no sidewalk, no pedestrian facilities, and really unformal, unallocated parking. And so we see here cars parked wherever they can find places, including there's a van parked in the bushes there. So what occurs is pedestrians often have to navigate that and sometimes walk into the travel lane and compete with vehicles as they're moving along Peninsula Road. The middle, so now we're standing on Peninsula Road, again looking north. On the right-hand side is the Yuki Scoops, and on the left-hand side is ANAF. So again, we see really deteriorated asphalt beyond its useful life. On the left-hand side, we see the pedestrian sidewalk. The right-hand side, no pedestrian sidewalk, no pedestrian facilities, and really informal parking there. So we see folks turning in to Yuki Scoops. They're nosing in and backing out, which is a no-no in modern-day transportation planning, so that has to go. On the bottom, we're now standing at the corner of Main and Peninsula Road, looking north. To the right is Tai Tea, to the left is Davison Plaza. Again, really deteriorated asphalt. On the right-hand side, there's a big, wide-open, sort of unutilized shoulder there. Really sort of lots of open space occurring there. And then again, from Tai Ti walking north, pedestrians have to navigate that situation, so they often go left of those cars and walk onto the travel path of the walk onto the travel lane and compete with cars as they have to get to where they're going. It's worth noting that adding a pedestrian sidewalk on this side of Peninsula Road has been designed about 6 times in the past 10 years by district staff, and it's always been unfunded. It was also included in our Peninsula Road project for design, but remained unfunded as well. So we'll just get back to that in a moment. So that's the existing configuration and condition. So if approved by council today, the schedule for this, we're tentatively working with our contractor right now to begin paving end of September. So roughly September 23rd, they could begin this project, and it could take about 3 weeks to complete. The construction method would be similar to what we've seen in other areas. It includes milling and paving, restoring the full asphalt length. However, it'd be less disruptive this time because there wouldn't be any concrete works occurring. In the previous sections, we saw concrete aprons, concrete curbs and gutters, of course, storm infrastructure, really create a lot of delays for people. So during this work, we would anticipate and expect that all businesses remain open. Of course, with that said, there's intermittent disruptions as machinery moves up and down the highway and blocks access periodically. Prior to beginning, we would formalize our communications, our schedule, and communicate that to the community through Yuki Mail and social media, etc. This 3-week period. And then for local businesses, we would have more dedicated handouts informing them of key contacts, what to expect, who to call, I mentioned that, and more detailed schedule. Our designs have been shared with the Ministry of Transportation and Infrastructure for review, comment, edit, and approval. So they're very supportive of this Section 3 and finishing the project. They have reviewed, edited, and put in comments into the designs that you have attached to your agenda, Council. And those are illustrated with Modi's approval. It's worth noting that this is a provincial highway, and so we do a design. We try to provide the design that's safest and best practice to our abilities. We then send it off to the ministry. They review it, and then their role is to provide comment and make sure it meets all the provincial standards and regulations, best practices, and they send it back to us. So that's occurring now, and we're anticipating a smooth process with Modi. So, once the highway is paved, it of course has to be painted, and so it presents an opportunity for an improvement or an adjustment of the line configuration if council chooses. So the paving affects the utility, the safety, the functionality of the highway, and specifically it affects pedestrian travel paths, parking, and movement through the corridor. Oops, sorry. Okay, there we go. So what you have in front of you is option A, which is in your agenda. And option A includes two standard travel lanes. Of course, the existing pedestrian lane on the left-hand side, the western side, and on the eastern side, there's a newly painted-in pedestrian lane on that eastern side, which connects Main Street all the way to Bay Street and beyond. So this is option A, the sort of upgraded configuration. So let's zoom into that. Okay, so now we are again standing on Peninsula Road or looking down at it from bird's eye view, looking towards Bay Street. So we see fully paved and refurbished asphalt. On the left-hand or western side, we see formalized parking. On the eastern side, we also see formalized parking. That van is still parked there somehow. And then we also see a new pedestrian travel path along the eastern side. So this section is we're now looking down at ANAF and also Oceans West Pest Supplies, Yuki Scoops. And here we see again refreshed asphalt, formalized parking, and the new pedestrian path on that eastern side. This is an area that the Ministry of Transportation did have some input. They've removed a couple of parking spots, for example, in front of Yuki Scoops, and then also in front of that parking lot where on the eastern side where that little garden is. So we previously had parking there, and they felt it was unsafe and not to their standard and created some sightline issues, so they've removed that, and we've integrated it into our design. We're looking down now at Davison Plaza in Tai Ti. So this is a similar situation with this configuration. It's new asphalt, formalized parking on both sides, the east and west side, and then a new pedestrian path going from Tai Ti all the way north, connecting the entire corridor. So with that, we've looked at the existing condition, the existing configuration, the line painting configuration that's there today. We've looked at the new potential configuration that Council has to decide on today and could approve. And then the third option is for Council to direct staff just not to pave and defer it for another year. So with that said, we'll take a look at pros and cons and a bit of just quick compare and contrast of all these options. So on the right-hand side, we see this sort of new configuration that could be installed for the same cost, the same time frame. And then on the left-hand side, we see the existing condition that also could be repainted for the same cost, the same time frame. On the right, the proposed improved condition enhances pedestrian safety. It improves the streetscape at a low cost. It's a proactive solution to long-standing safety issues and aligns with long-term planning goals. Option B is to maintain the current layout. It misses the chance to improve pedestrian safety in the streetscape. And option C avoids any immediate disruptions to the community by not paving, but it leaves the road in very poor condition and forfeits Modi's available capital for another year. So the next steps here are pending Council's direction, we'll finalize our planning and design for Section 3. We'll continue working with Modi on permits and design finalization. We're in conversation right now with Modi and starting to have discussions about future phases, including improving the intersection at Main and Peninsula Road. That's, in our opinion, one of the most critical safety concerns in the whole highway. So we have to get to that in short order in the years ahead, and then as well continuing paving down towards Whiskey Dock. Lastly, so in the new year, we'll produce a maintenance management plan, working with the Ministry of Transportation right now, and there'll be a formal document that identifies who's responsible for taking care of what and for how long and at what cost. That's a critical document that hasn't been created yet, and it's part of the puzzle that's led to why the highway has become so deteriorated. So once we have that in place, we'll understand for the next 30 years how to take care of this really important asset for the community. So again, Council, the staff recommendation is option A to choose the sort of line painting configuration that improves the corridor and make effective use of the remaining funds. So thank you for your attention, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. McIntosh. I noted in your report option A would paint in a sidewalk, but a concrete sidewalk could potentially be installed on top of the paint in future years as funds become available.
Yes, so the reason that we're proposing painting it in is because we don't have the funds to build that concrete sidewalk. So painting it in is essentially a safe place marker for now, for pedestrians to have a safe place to travel. And in future years, under Council's direction, we could raise funds and build a proper sidewalk there.
Great, thank you for that. Any questions for staff from Council?
I have a question and a comment, and I'll start with the comment. and I'm going to speak to this later, but pedestrian safety is something that is important to me. My concern, based on my limited experience, is that a painted pedestrian line is actually going to create a situation where pedestrians and people who understand what those lines mean are going to feel safe and emboldened to walk there. And people who don't know what those lines mean or who aren't familiar or aren't paying attention are going to assume that that's part of the road. The current situation right now is far from ideal, but it's one where I think most pedestrians are really careful about walking on the road because they understand that the risks that they're facing. Having a painted line versus an actual concrete sidewalk strikes me as something that would actually be far likelier to increase the risk to those pedestrians, because if someone doesn't understand what those lines mean, they're going to get run over. So that's a comment. My second question is looking at the appendix here. I don't see a legend, and I'm really curious what these symbols mean. And to cut to the chase, I'm really curious if any of these symbols refer to signage that would be installed along this stretch of road.
Through the mayor, so I'd have to get more clear about what symbols, Councillor Mafty, you're referring to exactly.
Oh, they're like blue circles and green squares, and some of the green squares have lines through them, and there are pink circles that are hatched, and like all manner of, I won't call them arcane, but certainly as someone who's not a traffic engineer, I have no idea what they mean. And so basically, are there going to be any new signs that are not currently on this stretch of peninsula incorporated into the final product here? Yield signs, stop signs.
Councillor Mafty, so there won't be, I'd have to, so no is my answer in the moment. There won't be the addition of any traffic pattern changes or yield signs or additional stop signs or anything of that nature. There might be new signs to sort of clarify our bus stop that's in that area. There might be signage to verify and clarify that it's a pedestrian path, perhaps, things of that nature. But what the symbology in that drawing, and apologize, there isn't a legend, there should be, is about part of it is symbology that's going on the road, perhaps, and also I know that there's some water valves that are blue triangles, etc.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I'm sure all of this stuff needs to be carefully considered, and it all means something. I just don't know what it means, and so that's why I was curious. But thank you very much.
Any other questions for staff?
Yeah. Are there not utilities and whatnot under this road that need to be addressed that won't be addressed when we pave this?
Through the mayor, so yes, there are utilities that are aged and undersized in this section of the road.
So we're going to have to tear it up again.
There will be work needed in this section, as there will also be work needed in all the sections in Peninsula Road.
Okay, it just doesn't strike me as really looking like it's at the end of its serviceable life. When you look at all the other roads in town, it's actually in pretty decent shape. So one of my concerns that I've had since the beginning is the narrowing of that road and the pushing of the parking against that, and the reliance, as Mark said, on lines to provide safe passage for pedestrians and vehicles. And I can't see how a driver would be able to open their door and get out of their car safely with this configuration in front of Tay-T and the Snack Shack and whatnot. And while I applaud the efforts to make a pedestrian passageway, I really am not a fan of narrowing the road there and putting people at risk of getting out of their vehicles, because a lot of people are crossing that road back and forth from Davison Plaza. If a car door opens and somebody tries to veer out of the way to not hit the car door and somebody's crossing the road, like, it's just, I think we're trying to put 10 pounds of manure in a 5-pound bag here.
Can I speak to that?
Yes, please.
So through the mayor, so this configuration of travel lane, parking lane, pedestrian walking lane is, again, a provincial standard. We see it all over North America, Canada, BC, and here in Ucluelet. The dimensions are 3.6 meters for a travel lane, 2.4 meters for a parking lane, and then X for a pedestrian lane. And so the parking lane is there to really protect the pedestrians. So the pedestrians are on the outside of the road, and the parked cars are protecting the pedestrian. So that configuration with travel lane, parking lane, pedestrian lane, as I mentioned, it's here in Euclid already. It's in front of Image West right now, is that exact same configuration, the exact same dimensions. It's also in front of West Coast Connect, the exact same configuration, the exact same dimensions.
And
So-
it's too tight there. And in front of the Ucluelet liquor store, at the corner of Bay there, people getting in and out of their vehicles it's not a great situation, and there's a lot of close calls, and we're talking about expanding that situation to here, because I can't see how you can get out of a vehicle there without stepping into the middle of the road. So do what you want, but I'm voicing my opposition to this layout, and I have since the beginning. I don't think it's going to work. I think it's going to upset a lot of people, and I don't like it, but I'm just one person, so I'll leave it at that.
Well, I think a painted sidewalk is better than a not painted sidewalk, personally, because it's going to give pedestrians a place to walk rather than weaving in and around parked cars, which is what they're doing right now.
Yeah, but I vehemently disagree, and I want to clarify this point. The risk facing pedestrians is from vehicles. That, like, if I'm, or my kid, or you, or anyone is a pedestrian, the risk that they're facing is getting hit by a car. And it's never going to be the highest risk of someone who's conscious of where they're driving and driving according to the rules. It's going to be someone who doesn't know what they're doing and who's not obeying the rules. And what these painted sidewalks do is they create this illusion of safety. And it's no comfort to anyone once they've been hit by a car to be vindicated in court when they sue, and it's like, oh yeah, that's a painted sidewalk, they had the right of way, and this person was totally wrong. It's gonna lead to accidents by creating this discrepancy between what feels like it's safe but actually isn't. And I'll get to this again in a moment, but I think this is a big problem. If there was a plan to put in an actual raised curbed sidewalk, there'd be other issues, but at least the safety side of it would be addressed. And so for that reason alone, where I'd support an actual raised sidewalk, I think the painted lines are worse than nothing at all. Because at least now people are like, oh shit, I gotta be really careful. Whereas what's gonna happen eventually is people say, I've got every right to be here, it's a painted line. Boom, they get smoked by someone who's driving their very first time in Ucluelet, not paying attention, speeding, and hits them.
People are driving on the bike path.
It happens
Now.
all the
So-
time, all the time.
But
Our offices are at Bay and Peninsula.
Yeah.
The stuff that I see looking out my office window on a daily basis is like, it's crazy. And I think it's going to happen again and again. This goes right to the brewery. This goes past a lot of businesses that see a lot of foot traffic. I think it's dangerous to rely on painted lines, frankly.
But a traveling vehicle would have to somehow hop over the parked vehicles to hit somebody walking on the painted line.
No, right here, for example, like right here, this is the painted line and there's no parking. This is the lane. Like, this is just going to be white paint. These are parking spots on this side. This is just a white painted line, and where this happy fellow's walking in the circle, someone's going to think they're safe. There's no parked car between whoever's driving out of town and whoever's walking.
What happens on the one day year we get snow, or when it's dark and it's raining, you can't see those lines, and if they're not maintained, like I don't know, I think I don't know.
I'm going to get Councillor Hoare to chime in because she goes to Tai Tea all the time.
And I miss going. I do walk up and down that street a lot, that area near KT and across from Davison Plaza, and I cross back and forth regularly as well. Possibly not at the crosswalk by the brewery, but we didn't hear that out loud. Hope Sergeant's not in the room. I have to say that the current configuration feels very unsafe, both as a pedestrian and as a driver. If I'm trying to park, people are on either side of my car, or I'm trying to pull out of a parking spot. People don't know where to walk. Now, I totally hear what you're saying, Councillor Massey, that there may be a false sense of security with a painted line, but I think the uncertainty right now is dangerous. Sure, I'd love to see a concrete sidewalk all the way up and down, but we don't have the money for that. I like the option because I like the idea of there being a definition of, you know, to help, because it's quite confusing. People park close to the fog line, they park far away from the fog line, you know, so that in the photo, the bottom left, you can see that large empty space, and people pull in and double park there in front of the snack shop. And I don't think that's good either. So I like option A because I think it's a safer idea. That's, you know, in my ever so humble opinion.
That's my opinion as well. So thank you for that. Councillor Anderson?
Oh boy, there's a definite theme with sidewalks today.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I went out with Mr. McIntosh and looked at this, and we talked to the business owners that were there, and we walked it. We looked at it, and I think this option A. I was out there for more than 2 hours, just watching how traffic works, and we went through a mock trial of where the car would be and opening the door, and it didn't seem bad to me. It seemed to make sense. It felt like any other city. Although you raise this point now about the line, and I didn't think about that before, like on a snowy day, you know, it's rare, or at night.
Can I just ask you a quick question? You said you did a test and parked a car and tried to open a door. Did you park it in the middle of the lane? Because that's where these parking spots are. I just want to be clear. You can see where the existing spots are, and the new spots are at least 6 feet into the lane. So did you park a car in the lane? And
yeah, we measured, right? I mean, we measured exactly, so it would be exactly where the spot is, and tried opening the door, and then we looked at, like delivery vehicles and what they would be up against in this situation. We talked to Sean Mills from the Snack Shack, and talked to the owner of Pappy's Cantina, and Dennis, and is it Mary Ellen from Tahiti? And yeah, I mean, it seemed to work, and when I looked at it, but again, like, I didn't think about this line thing until you brought that up, and that's a tough one to get my head around, like the false sense that line might give. I really don't know how to answer that.
Without a curb there, people are not gonna park up to, it'll be chaos. There'll be cars that are half parked over those lines, so expecting people to follow painted lines without curbs is
there's a reason they build raised sidewalks, right? And it's because painted lines don't work. Like, I hear, not to interrupt, but I hear what Jen's saying, and it's like, it feels safer. That's why it's more dangerous, because you think in your head, I'm safe, and then you put yourself in a situation that currently you'd be like, I'm not safe. I have to look 4 ways and make it quick.
The pickle is, this is, engineering wise, there's been quite a few people who've looked at this, whose job it is from the ministry, and this is a standard. So I don't know if that's cold comfort, but
it's a minimum.
Sure, yeah. So there's been a lot of eyes on this, so it does make sense. But now that when we talk about that does kind of resonate that there could be an issue with that sign. I mean, the pickle is that we're going to have that concrete sidewalk at some point, and this is like an interim solution because we just don't have enough money, and that's the bottom line here. Is we will have it at some point. The question is, what do we do until we have that money to put that curb in for the safety? So what would be a suggestion that you might have?
I'd say wait, personally. Like, this is going to get torn up anyway, right? That the whole argument to redoing the work that was done was because it's a 2-for-1. We have to address stuff that's under the pavement And as long as we're doing that, we might as well improve what's on top. So that one made total sense to me. And even that had, you know, half the town up in arms. And this is just like, oh, well, we know we're going to have to tear it up again anyway. So let's just do a half-assed job in the meantime, still inconvenience everyone and
Twice.
possibly put people at risk. And then we're going to have to do it again anyway. And the idea of like, well, we don't have the money now. It's like, okay, let's wait until we have the money and then let's just do the job properly. Like, just because it's Modi's money doesn't mean it's not a waste of money. And the impact on the businesses is like, that's
It'll be twofold. Well, it'll be twice because they'll have to do it twice.
Through the mayor, if I just may jump in.
Yep.
So the Ministry of Transportation has identified this asphalt has failed, deteriorated beyond its life. So it just, now that we're here, the money is here. We have to replace it now. The infrastructure that is underneath the highway that has to be replaced at some point could be 5, 10, 15 years down the future whenever development is ready to pay for it. And it isn't underneath the path. So the painted path wouldn't be part of replacing any infrastructure.
And a sidewalk has been thought about several times, you said 5 or 6 times, and just has never materialized because of lack of funds.
Yep, that's exactly right.
Right.
And I'll just add, so painting paths is part of the BC Active Transportation Guide as a best practice.
That's good information too. Okay, if there's no other questions, does someone want to make a recommendation?
I know I'm gonna be well, I don't know, but I'm gonna let me actually get the words here. I'll move that council reject this option and wait to consider any highway line painting or other improvements until such funds are in hand to do the job properly.
Do I have a seconder?
I'll second it.
Councillor Kennington seconds. Any further discussion? So your motion is to not do any paving?
Not according to what's been presented in the report. It's we're inconveniencing businesses to do a shitty job that we're gonna have to tear up again in the near future anyway. That just that seems like a waste of time, money, resources with a real impact on the community.
But it's gonna have a huge improvement over what it is now.
No, it's not. I think it's going to make things unsafe. The only commentary that I heard about the work that I actually thought was necessary was negative. And when we can't even tell people, hey, this is actually fixing a problem, I think anyone who complains about this work is going to be completely right. Me personally, I want to go on the record and like clear myself so that at the very least I can be like, hey man, I didn't vote for this. So that's just me. I think this isn't an improvement to my mind.
That millwork and the paving for businesses, how much time would it be? So say I owned a business by Tate there, what would be the inconvenience time?
Yes, so milling and paving, this is about a 3-week project. And it'll be similar to what we've seen in other areas, but less impactful because of no concrete work. And so as that large milling machine that we know well now moves up and down the travel path, there'll be intermittent disruption. So when the machine is right in front of an access milling, obviously access is disrupted for a couple of hours. So when the machine is gone and past driveway access, vehicles can come back in.
So they don't have to close. There's businesses that don't have to be closed.
We don't want them to close. We don't expect them to close. We want them to stay open during this practice.
They have full access.
Yep.
Pedestrians have full access.
Yep, that's right.
I just want to make note of the loss of some parking spaces for some businesses and the amount of opposition that's going to come from that. And I realize that that's not, to provincial standards to have the parking the way it is, but there will be backlash, and it doesn't appear as though there's been any consideration to relocation of those parking spaces. Have the businesses been consulted that are going to lose those parking spaces? If we just want to repave it, that's fine, but it's all these lines painted all over the place that I think are a mistake, and I wouldn't support that I would support like fixing parts of the road that need to be fixed, but I think it's just going to create undue hardship on businesses once and then again when it needs to be done again.
But it may be 20 years before it's done again. We
It may
we don't
take people
know.
20 years to recover from the pandemic and then the fire.
Well, those are other topics. Any other discussion? Okay, we'll call the vote. The vote is to.
I have a comment actually.
Okay, Councillor Hoare.
I will comment, one of the things that I noticed they had included in this, because it's a constant problem, in front of Davison Plaza near the Barclay and just in front of the crosswalk by the brewery, they're proposing to put ash lines, like a no parking area. People are parking there all the time, often with large RVs and things, and it causes problems for people trying to exit through those two driveways, the one in front of the Children's Center now and the one at Davison Plaza. So I actually think that is something that is improved by this. Currently, it's just yellow and along the curb, and nobody realizes people park right in front of their parking lot. So things that are improved by this plan. Whether one likes the idea or not, but I do think that replacing the pavement when there are massive potholes in it, is worth it, because we don't know when we're going to be able to replace that.
Thank you, Councillor Hoare. So the motion on the table is to do nothing. Those in favour? Any opposed? Okay, that's defeated then. Does someone want to make another motion?
Was there not an option to repave but not do all this revised line painting?
Yeah, that was option B. Or there is an option A that someone could pose. In fact, why don't I do that? I will move that council authorize option A of the highway line painting configuration to be completed as presented in report number 24-89. Do I have a seconder?
I'll second.
I'll second.
Okay. Thank you, both of you. Any further discussion? I thought this would be a 5-minute discussion. No further discussion. All those in favor? Any opposed? That carries. Thank you, Mr. McIntosh.
Thank you.
The second report item is 9.2, mobile vending application. Don't know how to pronounce that. Kikan. After our planning assistant presents, the applicant will have an opportunity to address council. Welcome, Ms. Haynes.
Through the mayor, this should be a short report. We have received a mobile vending license application from Kikan Food Truck, which currently operates at the junction, and they wish to relocate to the vendor space that is available at the Army and Navy and Air Force or ANAF property. Kikan offers an Asian soul food menu and aims to incorporate local and seasonal ingredients. The existing development permit at the ANAF property allows for 3 food trailer spaces, and Kikan intends to replace one of the current 3 vendors on the property by spring of next year. There are no proposed changes to the development permit. However, as required by our business licensing bylaw, all mobile vendor licenses must be approved by council. I'm happy to answer any questions, and Genevieve, the owner, is in the audience as well if you have any questions directed for her.
Great, thank you. quick question for staff. This is not happening until the spring, next spring.
That's correct.
And do we know which mobile vendor is being replaced?
I believe this is not confirmed, but it should be West Coast Salty Buns.
Oh, okay, interesting. Any other questions for staff? Looks pretty straightforward. There is a recommendation here.
I'll make that. I'll move that council.
Oh, the applicant wants to speak? Okay, great. Actually, if you wouldn't mind just going up to the microphone, because people on Zoom won't be able to hear you.
Hi, my name is Genevieve Kang. I'm a chef, holistic nutritionist, and the owner of Kikon, a food truck serving Asian soul food. And yeah, I'm relatively new to the Euclid community, only having moved here last autumn with the intention of simply opening up a food truck and really wanting to serve the community by providing new, nourishing, and delicious food options, really. And naturally, my placement is at the Junction. That was kind of seemed to be the only place I could park myself for the time being, but with the intention of really wanting to serve the local community and make myself a bit more accessible. I've been kind of itching to get into town, and then yeah, the opportunity presented itself that I might be able to replace one of the existing food trucks at the ANAF. So yeah, and I don't have much to add, but if there's any questions.
Any questions for the applicant?
What does Kikon mean?
Kikon is actually all the first initials of my family. So my food, it's Asian soul food. I'm part Chinese, and all the menu is very much rooted in, it's kind of like updated versions of recipes I grew up with. So it's very much an homage to my culture and upbringing. Yeah.
Look forward to it.
Great, yeah, we do look forward to it. So go ahead with your motion.
All right. I will move that council approve the issuance of a mobile vending business license for Kikon Food Truck, proposed to be located at 1708 Peninsula Road, Lot 1 Plan, VIP 5190, Clayoquot District.
I'll second that.
Councillor Anderson seconds. Any further discussion? All in favor? None opposed. That carries. Thank you, and we look forward to sampling your food.
Thanks so much.
Thank you. The final report item is 9.3, four-way stop at Peninsula Road and Bay Street. This is a verbal report from Councillor Mafty. And I'd also like to note the correspondence included in this section of the agenda about the four-way stop is part of the late agenda package. Councillor Mafty?
Yeah, I'll stay here. I don't think I need to go up there, right?
Oh,
Okay, awesome. I just want to open this up by saying that I received all of the correspondence that came to council, and I've also had lots of conversations with other people. The recurring theme throughout all of it was the desire for increased safety, improved safety. I try to walk in town as much as I can. I've got 2 young kids. We walk around town all the time. They're at an age where they bike to school on their own. And just because of the circle I'm in, having young kids, I know lots of other parents with young kids who are in the same space. So I want to clarify that my opposition to the stop sign is really rooted in my desire to see improved road safety in our community. I've seen lots of stuff that I think is beyond the pale in terms of the risk that pedestrians and children on bikes are facing. And my opposition to stop signs is not something that I just sort of pulled out of a hat. The opposition to stop signs is fairly universal. I forwarded a bunch of material to council, and I've included it in the late agenda from a number of sources. And I'm just going to briefly quote from a few. This is material from DriveSmart BC. This is one article here. Stop signs are not for speed control. I'll quote, putting up a stop sign to arbitrarily interrupt through traffic on a street is a common misuse. Vehicle speeds are only slowed at the sign. Drivers then tend to accelerate from stop signs. There's also lots of data to show that drivers accelerate between stop signs, often reaching speeds higher than before the stop sign was installed. This is a natural attempt to make up for lost time, and it's one of the reasons why stop signs are not effective as speed control. In fact, they exacerbate the issue. Furthermore, in terms of how traffic moves through the community, quote, drivers will find the path of least resistance. If they can find a route with fewer traffic controls, they will take it. So adding a stop sign simply pushes traffic elsewhere in the neighborhood. Your problem solved, but it now causes problems for others nearby. Obviously, a stop sign on the main road, there's only one place to push traffic if traffic does get pushed, which apparently data shows it will, and that's through residential roads where we should have less traffic, not more. Furthermore, like speed limit signs, drivers will ignore a stop sign if they think it's unnecessary. As I said before, our offices are exactly at that intersection, and my desk faces that intersection, and I can tell you that the vast majority of vehicles going through that stop sign at best roll through. And many times a day, I see vehicles that it's as if the stop sign's not even there. They go right through it. Drivers decide, again, going back to a quote here, drivers decide that there's no need to stop, which could lead to an increase in collision. Furthermore, there are sort of environmental impacts. Another Drive Safe article in Drive Safe BC here indicates that replacing signed stopped intersections with other alternative means can reduce collisions by 37% and fatal collisions by 90%. So taking stop signs out is actually safer. This is a policy piece that the federal government here, basically, I'll just summarize it by saying that removing stop signs significantly reduces greenhouse gas emissions because you don't have vehicles idling. It improves mobility. It increases safety. There's one overarching recommendation in this Canadian federal government report that has been found to be universally true, and there are countless examples all across North America and Europe. If you want to increase safety in a community, you want to increase road safety, you want to increase traffic flow, a 30-kilometer-an-hour blanket speed limit is the only way to do it. Obviously, the only way to implement such a 30-kilometer-an-hour speed limit is through signage. And people say, oh, people are just going to ignore those signs. Well, exactly the same way they're going to ignore a stop sign. The problem is when drivers ignore stop signs, they hit pedestrians, they hit other vehicles. This is something that the government knows, everyone knows this, ICBC knows this. You get fender bender, rear end collisions, and I've seen it countless times just since those signs were installed. People who go through startle other people. Like if one person doesn't respect the stop sign, it's worse than not having it there at all. And in countless examples, you remove stop signs, you actually increase the safety of the intersection. Finally, I was surprised to hear that stop sign was installed at the recommendation of the province, because according to their own, this is the BC Provincial Manual on Regulatory Signs. This is the 260-page document that I'm really sorry I asked you guys to print because I didn't realize it was all going to get printed. But it's very clear and it's unambiguous. This is the province that ostensibly installed the stop sign. And they clearly say right at the beginning of the section on stop signs, R1 signs, stop signs, should be used only where traffic engineering studies indicate they are warranted. I'm not aware that there was such a study. These studies should consider factors such as traffic speeds, traffic volume, sight distance, and collision experience. Improvements such as parking prohibition and improved sight distance should be implemented first and safety performance monitored. If this proves ineffective, then consider installing R1 signs. So even the province is basically saying a stop sign is like the last resort. I don't want to see accidents. I don't want to see anyone getting hit. I don't want to see anyone in a fender bender. I think this stop sign's a bad idea, and I think it's a slippery slope. It's if you've got like a CO2 leak in your house and someone says, oh, well, I've got a solution, just keep the window open. Like that to me is analogous to what we're doing with these stop signs. If people are worried about traffic safety, as I am, we need to actually address the problem in a meaningful way. And I think there's tons of evidence and data to suggest exactly what that is. A 30-kilometer-an-hour blanket speed limit in the community, which is going to have myriad positive impacts. Installing stop signs against their intended use and against the recommendations, it is just going to compound our issues. And it won't be long, I hope I'm wrong, before someone gets smoked at that intersection by a driver that just chooses or isn't even aware of the stop sign and ignores it. And I've already seen a couple near misses. And it was pretty funny. I'm not on Facebook, but a lot of the people who are were like, you're going to laugh. A lot of the comments that people were posting when the sign first went up was like, oh, I'm so glad to see the stop sign, but I didn't even notice it was there, and I drove right through the intersection. That's going to happen time and again. So what I would ask council to do is to consider an act of council to remove the stop sign, and actually seriously consider the advantages of a blanket 30-kilometer-an-hour speed limit. The final thing that I want to do is address a few of the people who said, well, I live on Bay Street and it's really great. I'm sure it is. There are way more people and many more vehicles that drive down Peninsula Road than drive on Bay Street. That's the foundational philosophy of how road signage is applied, is to improve flow. And so improving flow for 5 people or 10 people who live on Bay Street and impeding the main thoroughfare on Peninsula Road, like that, to my mind, it's foolish. So I see this as a real risk with real drawbacks, and I would like to use it as an opportunity to open up a discussion about something that we could do as a council proactively to increase road safety. This is something that we've heard about time and again. We want speed bumps. People speed. People drive too fast. This came up just with the high focus, right? People driving down Helen Road too fast. Stop signs are not the way to calm traffic. They have the opposite effect, and that's been proven by data at every level of government all around the world.
So are you looking for discussion?
I'd like any input, and I'd like to gauge the appetite for moving this to another meeting where we could look at a comprehensive traffic calming strategy, namely implementing a 30-kilometer-an-hour speed limit and removing these unnecessary stop signs.
So that sounds like a committee of the whole meeting, is what you're suggesting.
Yeah, I think that would be an appropriate way to do it. I certainly wasn't expecting like a vote now, but I just wanted to put this on the table because it's something that I think we all care about is road safety. So yeah, committee of the whole sounds fantastic.
Okay, so the only correspondence I've received is thanking us for putting those stop signs in.
Yeah, same here. And to those people, I'd say, I hear it, but you're wrong. And the proof of that is that, like, when the federal government, when the U.S. Department of Transportation, when ICBC, when everyone who actually studies the problem says this is a bad idea, if anyone thinks it's a good idea based on zero data or their own anecdotal experience, they're wrong. And I don't want people in our community to pay the price for that mistake, getting hit by a car. I'd like to see a safer community for everyone, and I'm going to defer as a data-minded person to the experts that have studied this time and again. Again, like across continents, there's nowhere where what I have shared with you tonight does not hold true. There are no exceptions to this, and including even in this province itself, where the province clearly says, don't use stop signs to calm traffic. That's not what they're for. What you're going to do is cause accidents.
Okay, so can we refer this to staff to look at a committee of the whole meeting?
If that is council's prerogative, we'd just like to, for clarity on what exactly council is looking for in that committee of the whole report. Is it both the stop sign, a question of the stop sign at Bay and Peninsula Road, or is it the 30-kilometer-hour speed reduction for the community, or both?
I'm guessing both.
I'd say as a start, I'd like to see the stop signs removed for these reasons, but the far greater win for all of us would be to look at what would be required to implement the 30-kilometer-an-hour and remove extraneous signs.
I think what we could do, or council could do, is we could probably do a committee of the whole report and report back in order to, and I'm jumping on a little bit of a ledge here, but because this is a provincial highway, we can't just remove things. You would have to re-engineer. So you can't just go in and remove stop signs once they're in, because it's an approval process done through the Ministry of Transportation. So in order to make an adjustment to Peninsula Road such as this, as per the previous report for line painting or whatever it is, you need provincial approval through the Ministry of Transportation. So we wouldn't be able to do just remove the stop signs because there's more to it than just taking them down. What we could do is bring back a report to provide commentary on that stop sign, how it came forward, so council can have a discussion on it, and at the same time we can have information on the possibility of an overall speed reduction for the community.
That would be good to formalize, but I did follow up to ask at one point, how is it that stop sign was approved? And I was told, well, it was in the plans and council approved it when they approved the work to Peninsula Road, and to remove it would require an act of council. You'd need the council to decide to remove it if the council's the one who installed it. And maybe that was incorrect information, but that's the information that I was given at the time. And so at the very least, it would be good to clarify that.
Yeah, that you are correct. It would take a resolution of council to direct staff to undertake the work that is required to engage with the Ministry of Transportation and do the work to remove the sign. What I was indicating is that it's not just simple as remove the sign, just take them down. There's a lot more to it than just removing the sign. So council could direct staff to investigate what we would need to do to modify that intersection to be without a stop sign, and then we would bring that back to council for approval. So there's still a process, and it would take a resolution of council to move that process along.
Okay, very well. In the interest of sort of saving everyone's time, I'm not a crusader. I shared all this information with my fellow councillors, and I guess at this point, I just wonder if people read it and what their conclusions were.
I got it just as I sat down here, so I have not read it.
Oh, okay. All right. I did send an email about a month ago to all of you with links to all of the information that I also, like, there were hyperlinks in the email. Did anyone else?
I did look at a chunk of it. And the thing about the 30 kilometer zone, I've brought that up a few times. I really think traffic calming measures are, like, we've talked about it and around it. And to me, that's always been the best solution. So yeah, totally. Not sure about stop sign because, of course, I haven't driven through town since it went in. My apologies, everybody. Yeah, but I totally agree with dropping the town speed limit.
So do you need a motion for a report from council, Mr. Lawrence?
That would be beneficial, please.
Do you want to go ahead, Councillor Mafty, and make that motion?
I would move that we request a report from district staff investigating the feasibility and the rationale for the implementation of a blanket 30-kilometer-an-hour speed limit in the community, and furthermore, B, the removal of the stop signs on Peninsula Road at Bay. The ones on Bay can and should stay. But the removal of the ones on Peninsula, and then C, furthermore, the additional removal of any other extraneous signage at intersections in the community.
Do I have a seconder?
I'll second it.
Councillor Kennington seconds. Further discussion?
I just, the concern I have, and I second it because I just wanted to say my piece on the reduce. It would be great if everybody listened to that. We reduce the speed limit, but what's going to happen is people are going to be driving 30 on Peninsula, and every tourist in town is going to dart off onto every side street that we've got to do more than that. So I would suggest that we have a speed limit on Peninsula that's slightly above that of the side streets to keep people in that flow of traffic, because I don't want to see people like getting frustrated and speeding down Bay Street or speeding up Forbes or wherever they're going in.
So like 45 down the main
45 down the main road, 30 down the sides, just to keep, we can use it as a directional device, and so people don't get frustrated.
But you agree with like the philosophy of what I'm saying?
Well, you make a a good argument, and it's hard to refute all that documentation. The only caveat being that they said if there was an engineering review that said that it was necessary. So did that happen? I'd like to know if that happened, and if there was an engineering report that said yes, indeed, this is the one place in Canada that we should have a four-way stop, then I'm good with that.
Agreed.
But
I've asked for that and I haven't seen it either. So this is like the whole meeting we've agreed. This is remarkable.
So that can be all part of that report from staff. Mr. Lawrence?
Mayor, sorry. I'm just gonna weigh in here. So by expanding this to all intersections and signage, this would be a mountain of work that we would need probably a couple of consultants on, and a fairly big chunk of cash. I'm guessing, right? We would need to do a little bit of research. We could do a preliminary report on the possibility of speed reductions in town, and of course the Bay Street and Peninsula Road stop signs, but I would caution council of doing the entirety of the community for every stop sign in town. By all means, if that's what your intent is and that's what you would like to do, we'll be back in 6 months while we do that investigative work. And I suspect that for Councillor Mafty's intent here is that a report in the nearer term would be more beneficial than trying to figure out every single stop sign and reevaluating and re-engineering traffic flows on all the stop signs is the current intent. But I just want to be clear, because that is a massive amount of work to try to bring before council.
That's correct. My intent here was to open the discussion about a different philosophy to how we see traffic that's data based, rather than I feel that a stop sign's safer even when it isn't. And so what my expectation was that if there was enough support to move and direct council to do this, that all of this information, which is very easy for anyone to find, would already be well familiar to district staff and the people who do this for a living, and what we would hear back is something very similar. And so it's in that vein that I was looking for support to say, can we hear from district staff if this information is correct, and if it is, revisit the discussion based on that report to look at improving traffic safety through a reduced speed limit, and perhaps down the road the removal of additional signage. Definitely not that I want every intersection analyzed and looked at so we can consider them one by one.
Okay. And thank you for the clarity on that one, because it was making me awfully nervous with the size of the report.
Any further discussion? All in favor? None opposed? That carries. Thank you for your interesting report, Councillor Mafty.
I just want to conclude to all the people who wrote to me about the safety. I totally get it. That's where I'm coming from too. I want safer roads. There were a lot of people who basically were like, "You're crazy. This is improving safety." Believe me, we're on the same side here. The last thing I want is someone getting hurt in Ucluelet.
All right, thank you for that. The next agenda item is number 10, notice of motion. Are there any notices of motion? Seeing none, there are 2 correspondence items. The first item is 11.1, request for letter of support for REDIP funding application. This is a letter of support request from the Clayoquot Biosphere Trust for their Biosphere Center. I will note that they have offered to provide a template to make it easier for us. Is there an appetite to provide a letter of support for the CBT?
I think so.
Yeah, I would think so too. Is this the same grant that the Chamber is applying for? REDIP? Different avenue. Okay, good to know. Okay, so we're not sort of messing you guys up by... Okay.
All lead to the same pile of money.
Yeah. They're going for the bigger one. Well, of course, because it's a facility, right? Yeah. All right. Well, I will move that Council issue a letter of support for Clayoquot Biosphere Trust's application to the Rural Economic Diversification and Infrastructure Program for funding to construct the Clayoquot Sound Biosphere Center.
I'll second it.
Councillor Kennington seconds. Any further discussion? All in favor? None opposed. That carries. We can call a 5-minute break if you like. Sure. Why don't we call a 5-minute break at 6:34? All in favor? Oh, good. Okay, that makes sense, actually. Support each other. All right, we're back in session here. The next correspondence item is 11.2, water situation. This is an email from the Black Rock Resort about water quality issues. Mr. Lawrence, can you provide a little update on where we're at with our water upgrade system?
I would be happy to, but we have our Director of Engineering Services who is directly working on the project that would be more than happy to provide comment.
Perfect. Mr. McIntosh.
Thank you, Mr. Lawrence, to the mayor. So currently we are in concept and preliminary design. So we've just completed our site analysis now. Those designs and the completed sort of action items are available on our website. So go to capital projects and look up water treatment plant, and you'll see those designs and what we've been working on. And so just happy to share that we're making progress and making our way through our design, and we'll continue to update the community through the website as we make milestones, and also provide council with updates at sort of significant milestones along the way.
Great, thank you.
Can I ask you a quick question? Is it possible I know some people have added a filter. Could you, if you were having these issues, is it possible to filter them upstream of your business? Does that technology exist that we can do that? I've heard some people have put in like a private filter system.
Through the mayor, yep. There's pros and cons and successes and challenges to having small filters upstream on the system, like a residential or a commercial service line. And so, sort of anecdotally, I understand that people, there's some of that is happening in the community to various levels of success. So, for example, some people put them in and then replace their filter every couple of months, or when there's a disruption in the line, they find that their filter goes black immediately. So I would sort of offer that if folks want to take it into their own hands and have a filter in their system, it's something that others are doing to various levels of success. But municipal wide, the solution is to have the big filter at the junction.
Right. I just wonder, there's the letter that Ms. Kemp's had added to this part. It was a guest from the hotel that got sick. Is that possible? Would that be a flushing event and someone drank some of the water? The high level of manganese would make you feel ill. Is that
through the mayor? So I can't speak to that specifically, that specific event. However, our water is tested by Vancouver Island Health Authority, and it's controlled under the BC Safe Water Drinking Guideline. And what that does is it provides a maximum allowable concentrate for manganese and iron, as well as an aesthetic objective. And so our water is within that sort of provincially and federally mandated criteria that we follow. And if it wasn't, we'd of course be under a boil water advisory, etc. So happy to report that our water is safe to drink. It's meeting the guidelines. And if it wasn't, we wouldn't be drinking it.
right? Thank you.
So would it be possible for BlackRock to install a water filter where their water accesses the resort?
Yeah, they certainly could. Up to their capital budgets, and they certainly could do something of that nature. I'll offer this. So Ms. Kemp's, of course, was part of council in the approval of this large capital project, and we're aware that BlackRock is a sensitive location in the infrastructure. It's a low spot and seems to get hit often with black water. So I think Ms. Kemp's is sort of gently reminding us to hurry up and build the plant.
Got it. And when our water is tested, is the chlorine level tested as well?
So the chlorine is tested daily.
Daily. Because I have a neighbor that has a fish pond and has always had a fish pond, and she's always had live fish, but now they're dying all the time. So she's wondering if our chlorine level went up for some reason.
I'm in correspondence with her now. I've put her in touch with Public Works, and we're sharing our chlorine residuals with her now.
Oh, good. Thank you. I'll tick that one off my list then.
Okay.
There are 10 information items. Would anybody like to pull any of those out? .4 is an interesting one. There's a motion going to UBCM about not allowing fossil fuel funding of conferences, specifically Fortis, I would imagine. So that'll be an interesting resolution to have debated at the conference.
They already got me with the socks. So, no, I'm kidding.
The socks, yeah, the socks. You need those socks.
Blood socks.
To step up their game.
I'm gonna need like a linen suit to defend them after this.
Okay.
With a stop sign on the back.
And of course, because UBCM is coming up, we're getting copies of resolutions from all sorts of other municipalities. Yeah, nobody wants to pull anything else out of that? Nope.
We have a meeting with emergency services at UBCM. There was that last one, the Fire Act.
Emergency services?
Yeah, which isn't totally related to this, but Fire Safety Act. But I was just going to say we have that UBCM meeting about that. Right?
We got 5 meetings sent to us this morning, so I think that one is about replacing our fire hall because there's so few grants available to do that. So yeah, those 5 meetings are going to be really great. And we don't all have to go to all of them. We can pick and choose what ones, who wants to speak and who wants to be at those meetings. Okay, mayor's announcements. The 2024 Fall Program Recreation Guide is hot off the press. If anybody is looking to take in some dance, some yoga, some sports, there's all sorts of offerings in here, and this would be online as well, would it not, Mr. Lawrence? Yeah. So that's great. I just got notification from the Multiplex Society that they are hosting their Scramble golf tournament that they do every year. This is, which one is this one? This is their 24th annual golf fundraiser, and it's going to happen Saturday, September 21st. You can be involved by donating some swag. You can sign up to play the golf. There's a number of ways to help, and it's their largest fundraiser of the year that they put on every year. So that's September 21st. And just to note that Main Road has put out a notification that they are going to repair and resurface some of Highway 4 near Kennedy Hill, starting Monday, September 9th to Friday, October 18th. 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So if anybody's heading out of town, another delay to keep in mind, there will be single lane traffic, I think, throughout that process. So they will flush each side as they will monitor how many cars are lined up, and they'll flush accordingly. My meetings, August 23rd, I went to the West Coast Resources Society, their new Yuki Reuse It store grand opening, which is right next door to Raincoast at the Raven Lady building. So that it's a fairly small space, but at least it's a start for them, and it'll be great to see that, to see them make some money with that and maybe go bigger later. August 27th, I was in a Teams meeting with Ministry of Transportation and Josie's office regarding Highway 4 construction that I just mentioned. And August 28th, I was at an ACRD Committee of the Whole meeting in the morning and a board meeting in the afternoon. And that was it for my meetings. Councillor Anderson.
All right, it's been a while, hasn't it? So economic development with the chamber, that was, what was that, August 15th? I think somewhere around there. It was a ways back. Yeah, that was great to sit down and hash some things out. What else? I had a meeting with, we had talked about potentially, well, from that meeting, we talked with Samantha Hackett and about meeting up with who's on the way out right now as the person in charge of the Tofino Housing Corporation. So Kelly Lynn. And so we set up a meeting with her to talk about the possibility of what it looks like for us to set up a housing authority and the potential of joining forces to, but instead of reinventing the wheel, what does that look like if we were to change that to the Pacific Rim Housing Authority, and what that means. So we're going to talk a little bit more about that. We had a 1-hour meeting, and we'll probably look into it a little bit further. What else? Since then, had a meeting with. I have a meeting tomorrow. Oh, so one of the things that came out of that was there's a meeting tomorrow, I believe, with I think Mr. Gregg. It's BC Builds. I don't know if I go to that or not. She had mentioned that there's a meeting. Is that tomorrow? BC Builds. Is there a meeting tomorrow with that? Kelly is part of.
So we staff are meeting with other counterparts at this point to have a high level discussion. So at this point in time, might be a little bit premature to involve council. So it's our intent to have that discussion with a number of parties, including School District 70, Island Health. I think there's a representative from Tofino that might be coming out from their housing corporation, and UFN, but all of them are staff as far as I'm aware, and it's just this preliminary conversation that we're having. And then if there's a potential for movement, then we would then bring something to council to move forward with.
Right. I think she said there was a couple of councillors from Tofino going, but I don't know if I would, I don't think I'd be able to go to that anyway. I set up a meeting with Michelle, was it Babchuk from MLA from Campbell River to talk about, Samantha Hackett ended up sending me an email that North Island College has a program now that's fully paid for students to learn how to process and do the harvesting for seaweed. So I called, I guess it was Michelle, her name was in there, so I called her directly and I just said, would you be interested in meeting up to talk about this? So we have that meeting tomorrow, and I have a meeting on Friday with Cascadia Seaweed to see how we could set that up. He's tentatively interested in doing a base of operations in Ucluelet, so I'm trying to sweeten that pot as much as I can. And I think that's it for me.
Great. Good luck with the seaweed thing.
Love seaweed.
Councillor Hoare, you probably haven't been to any meetings, I'm guessing.
No, I have not. But I will comment, since you brought up the recreation guide, that there's a new dinner theater sign up. So if you have a little actor in you, sign on up. We have a lot of fun.
Yeah, that's good to know. Thank you. I actually thought twice about it last time, but didn't act on my thought.
You could be on the stage.
Councillor Kennington.
On the 14th of August, I had an accessibility committee meeting, but it was a real quick one. Just sort of finalizing everything, confirming dates and who was going to be where. And Scott Murray, of course, is leaving town, so he's no longer going to be on the accessibility committee, which is unfortunate because he was a good member to have on there, sort of our test pilot. And then right after that meeting, I had the economic development meeting and some exciting talk about VIU. I was feeling really good walking out of there that there's some real movement happening, and that we're gonna finally have something to really bite into and move forward with. So that's super exciting. And I just wanted to shout out ARIF has their open house on September 11th, 5:30 to 7:30 here at the community center. It'd be really great if people came out and asked questions and gave some ideas. They're looking for input. Pretty exciting project. So hopefully people come out and support it.
Yes, and the Recreation Department has scheduled a Yuki Days Volunteer Appreciation event in the main hall, I believe, at the same time on the 11th. So that'll get even more people possibly in to see ARIF's presentation.
2 for 1.
Yeah, 2 for 1. Councillor Mafti?
I also attended the West Coast Reuse It Center opening, just by virtue of being there that day. It's great to have lovely neighbors, and really excited to see them in that space. I think it's really great. And other than that, I didn't get up to too much. Did some informal Chinook stock assessment with the kids at Waya Point, but I don't know if that's council business. Yeah.
And did you put any in your freezer?
Indeed, we did.
All right, I've already been through mine. So now we are moving on to the question period. This is an opportunity for the public to ask questions and comment on matters within council's jurisdiction. Representations about bylaws that council is prohibited from holding a public hearing on, or bylaws that were subject to a public hearing, are not permitted at this time. Are there any audience members that wish to address council? We've got one left. No. Are there any members of the public attending by Zoom or telephone that wish to address council?
Please click the raise hand icon if you'd like to address council, or *9 if you're attending by phone. No raised hands at this time.
And have we received any emails to communityinput@ucluelet.ca?
No, we have not.
All right. I move that the September 3rd, 2024 regular council meeting be closed to the public pursuant to the following sections of the community charter. 90(1) labor relations or other employee relations. 90(1) litigation or potential litigation affecting the municipality. And 90(1) the receipt of advice that is subject to solicitor-client privilege, including communications necessary for that purpose. The meeting is now closed to the public at 6:58. Thanks for coming, Josh.
Now we get to talk about you.